Chapter 411. Mao and the other two followed Big Mountain through the forest. Although they wanted to find Pei Jie as soon as possible, Big Mountain could not. After all, Big Mountain was old. Even if Uncle Lin had been taking good care of him, giving him acupuncture and massages, and even his meals were nutritionally balanced, and he was much stronger than other old caracows, he could not withstand such a long distance of running. Big Mountain had not rested for a long time. He did not have much time to rest during the journey. He only rested for a few minutes when he arrived at the courtyard to ask for help. He only drank some water and ate some food. Compared to Zheng Tan, Big Mountain could eat better food, while Zheng Tan was still hungry. "Let's rest for a while," Pei Liang said as he looked at the endless forest. Pei Liang was worried about Pei Jie's safety. He wanted to fly over immediately. However, he knew that Big Mountain was not in good condition. If they continued like this, Big Mountain would die before they found Pei Jie. However, they could not run while carrying Big Mountain. They did not know the specific direction and route. The mountain was full of twists and turns. If they accidentally took the wrong path, Big Mountain might not be able to make it back in time. There was a language barrier. They could only let Big Mountain lead the way. After all, Big Mountain was not Zheng Tan. He did not have Zheng Tan's ability to give instructions. Since Pei Liang said so, Mao and Celestine did not object. They knew Big Mountain's situation. Mao gave Big Mountain some water and food. He raised his hand and massaged Big Mountain. His massage skills were not as good as Uncle Lin's, but it was good to let Big Mountain relax a little. They did not know how long the road ahead was. Big Mountain lay on the ground and closed his eyes to catch his breath. Now there were 3 people beside him. Although he used to like to find trouble with these fellows, he knew that with them around, there would be no danger. He did not need to waste his energy on guarding the surroundings. Seeing Pei Liang sitting on a rock in silence, Mao comforted him. "Jie will be fine. Black Coal must be there with him. Senior Pei, you probably don't know much about that black cat. It's much more capable than we thought. That guy is very experienced in tricking people." Just as he was about to say something to comfort her, Mao suddenly remembered that although the black cat was capable, it was also good at stirring up trouble. He really didn't dare to think about what would happen. After all, the enemy wasn't easy to deal with. The corners of Pei Liang's mouth twitched. He wanted to reply with a smile, but he couldn't. He hadn't eaten much until now. The only thing he ate was the food that he had stuffed into his mouth because he had to follow Dashin to look for someone. That way he would have enough energy to follow Dashin. Pei Liang was anxious. How could he not be anxious? It was even more impossible for him to laugh. In the midst of silence, Celestine's phone rang. Because the signal in the forest was not good, there were many places where there was no signal at all. Therefore, when the 3 of them came over, their master gave them a satellite phone. After hearing a few words from the other side of the phone, Celestine didn't look too good. "What's wrong?" Pei Liang's heart was in his throat. He was afraid that he would hear bad news about Pei Jie. Celestine hung up the phone and said, "De Ji, who has been missing for a long time, has now been found," but it also alarmed some people behind the scenes. Pei Liang and Mao's hearts tightened at the same time. Although De Ji's appearance could lead to the culprit, and the several executives of the zoo couldn't get away with it, at the same time, it also alarmed those who were hired, including the person who took Pei Jie away. If those people still wanted to negotiate, it would be fine. In that case, Pei Jie would still be useful to them. However, they were afraid that those people would be agitated and not intend to use hostages to threaten or negotiate. They would directly kill Pei Jie and then escape. Mao rubbed Dashin's black ears and scratched his chin. Then he held Dashin's head with 2 palms and looked at Dashin's opened eyes. "Dashin, I have to trouble you." Dashin stood up, looked around, identified the direction, and continued to walk forward. On the other side, Zheng Tan looked at the person guarding the tent. He held a loaded pen in his hand, and thought about how to get rid of this guy. At this time, a bird flew over from the forest. Bang! The innocent bird fell from the sky, and its scattered feathers gradually drifted down. The person who fired the gun didn't have much emotion on his face. It was as if he had just broken a branch and did something that couldn't be more normal. He didn't even look at the bird that was shot down. and continued to be vigilant of the surrounding forest. As long as there was a little movement, he would shoot. What's going on? The person who had just walked into the tent heard the gunshot and came out to ask. Nothing, just a bird. Looking at the bird on the ground, the person didn't say anything and walked into the tent again. Zheng Tan hid behind the grass and carefully exhaled. He really didn't expect that the other party wouldn't even let go of a bird. Well, he could decisively shoot his accomplice, let alone a bird. If Zheng Tan walked out now or was discovered by the other party, he would definitely be shot. He would rather kill a cat by mistake than let go of any suspicious movement. This was the other party's strategy now. What should I do? Zheng Tan was still some distance away from the other party. He also knew that with his clumsy skills, his accuracy would definitely not be high at this distance. If he shot here and missed the target and exposed himself, then it would be miserable. He might even immediately become a cat fairy. After thinking about it, Zheng Tan quietly retreated, and then came to the place where he had just tested the first bullet. The bird was still lying there, motionless. Zheng Tan stood up and picked up the bird. Looking at the bird in his hand, Zheng Tan thought to himself, "You're unlucky to have met a cat. I can only sacrifice you." Zheng Tan thought about throwing stones or other inanimate objects, but the other party obviously had a lot of experience in hunting in the forest. A stone or a bird, perhaps the other party could betray him at that moment. This way, Zheng Tan wouldn't be able to achieve his goal of distracting the other party. Regardless of whether the other party really had that kind of distinguishing skill, Zheng Tan planned to use the bird to try. It was a pity that he didn't know how to use a shotgun, and it wasn't convenient for him to use a shotgun. Otherwise, he would have just used a shotgun to kill these people. Zheng Tan shook his cat paws in disdain, carried the bird, and sneaked back to the tent. At this moment, there were gunshots coming from the tent, and monkey screams could also be heard. Zheng Tan's heart skipped a beat. Was the person who had just entered the tent planning to silence him? He had originally planned to wait for an opportunity, but now it seemed that he couldn't wait any longer. If he waited any longer, Pei Jie would probably lose his life. The person standing by the tent would change direction every now and then. Zheng Tan was closest to the other party. When the other party turned sideways, he took a deep breath, raised his hand, and threw the bird with all his strength. The other party's reaction was also fast. Based on the faint sound, he could tell that the object was flying from the air. When the other party's attention was on the bird, Zheng Tan quickly ran out of the bushes and ran towards the other party. Bang! A shot hit the target in the air. After this shot, the other party didn't stop. Although he didn't see clearly what was running out of the forest, he still wouldn't let go of any suspicious object. He quickly turned the muzzle of the gun. Bang! Another shot. It was just a hair's breadth away from success and failure. When Zheng Tan rushed over, he didn't think about anything else. He ran over at full speed. When he was close to the person, he pressed the pen and ran after shooting. When he heard the second gunshot, he even felt all the hair on his body stand up. A sense of extreme danger instantly descended upon him. However, he didn't care too much. After shooting the bullet in the pen, Zheng Tan ran to the back of the tent and jumped into the bushes. After waiting for a while, he didn't hear any other movements. He carefully looked outside. On the other side of the tent, the person who had been shooting just now was now on the ground. A small bullet was nailed to the other party's bare arm. Zheng Tan found a clod and threw it over with all his strength. He threw it at the other party's face. The clod hit the person and broke into several small pieces. The dust scattered, but the person who was hit still maintained the same appearance. The expression on his face didn't change much. Zheng Tan walked out of the bushes and jumped behind the tent. He looked again, then quickly rushed over and dragged the gun in the other party's hand. The person still didn't react. Looking at the bullet hole on the ground, it was less than a palm's distance from the route Zheng Tan ran to just now. If Zheng Tan was a little slower, he might have been shot. He still underestimated the ability of these people. Fortunately, there was only one person left here. Zheng Tan was temporarily relieved. He hid the gun in a nearby tree, then dragged the person into a tent. He tied a few rounds of rope in the tent and tied a dead knot. Bang! There was another gunshot from the tent. Zheng Tan had just tied up the unconscious person's hands. and didn't have time to tie up the unconscious person's legs. Anyway, the effect of the drug would last for a while. Zheng Tan changed a bullet in the pen and hurried over to the tent. Inside the tent, Page Ye was indeed not in a good condition. After he saw the person who kidnapped him walk into the tent, he zipped and locked the curtain of the tent. This way, if the people outside wanted to come in, they could only open it from the inside without destroying the tent. They couldn't open it from the outside. Destroying the tent would definitely cause a certain amount of commotion. It was impossible for the other party to not notice. After entering the tent, the person shot a monkey and used a knife to take out the things on the monkey's body, then the second monkey and then the red panda. Inside the tent, the curtain was closed and the light was very dim. The person turned on a solar-powered camping light hanging inside. This way, Page Ye could see the situation clearly. Looking at this bloody scene, Page Ye could no longer hold it in and burst into tears. F***ck, I don't want to be Superman anymore. This profession is too dangerous. If I'm not careful, I'll lose my life. Why aren't Dad, Uncle Wei, and Uncle Mao here yet? Where did Black Charcoal go? Could it be that he ran away on his own? After all, he was still a child. Even if he was usually naughty, he couldn't withstand the stimulation of blood and the threat of death. At first, Page Ye wanted to cry out loud. If there were any reinforcements nearby, he could urge them to quickly come to his rescue. However, as he cried and cried, all of Page Ye's grievances and fear surged out. He cried until he hiccuped. The person didn't stop Page Ye and let him cry loudly. He said in a slightly dialect Mandarin, "Cry slowly. It'll be your turn later." As he said that, the person looked at the curtain and then looked around the tent. He had just confirmed that no one could enter quietly, not even a child. However, he didn't know that cats weren't included. When Zheng Tan came in previously, he didn't come in through the curtain, but through the surrounding cloth fence that wasn't fixed. Zheng Tan chose to come in close to a cage. The dead monkey in the cage was still lying inside. The light shone there, casting a shadow on the cloth fence near the ground. In such a big place, there was no way for people to hide. Therefore, the person only glanced around before focusing on the last red panda again. This red panda's mental state had been getting better and better in the past 2 days. Its mind was also clear. It stuck close to the cage, away from the other side. However, it was still locked up and couldn't escape. Even if it knew it was dangerous, it couldn't help. It could only curl up there and stare in horror. The person held a gun and pointed the muzzle at the last red panda in the cage. Just as he was about to shoot, he thought of something and shouted outside the tent. He shouted the name of his accomplice who was guarding outside, but he didn't get a response. Now it was impossible for him to open the curtain and go out to see the situation, nor would he look outside through the only window of the tent. He was afraid that there was a sniper outside, and that he would be shot if he stuck his head out. His eyes flashed and the person put down the gun. His gaze moved away from the last red panda and landed on Page Ye, who was crying and hiccuping in the cage. When Page Ye saw the other party looking over, he stopped crying. Then he started crying at an even louder voice. He was anxious and scared. Other than crying, he didn't know what else he could do. He only hoped that someone could come over and take care of this lunatic with a gun in front of him. The person took out the key and opened the cage. He dragged Page Ye out of the cage and carried him in his hand like a chick. Page Ye's little strength couldn't struggle against the other party's steel-like arm at all. Page Ye used his hands to beat and kick, but he hadn't eaten much for more than a day. In addition, he had been locked in the cage for so long. His whole body was weak, and he didn't have much strength, so the effect was minimal. He also wanted to bite with his teeth, but unfortunately, the other party was wearing gloves with metal plates. He couldn't bite, and his teeth almost fell out instead. The person held Page Ye in his hand and ignored Page Ye's little tricks. What he cared about was the people outside. He scanned his surroundings and made sure that no one had come in. Something must have happened outside. Although he did not know who it was, nor did he know how the other party had managed to get rid of his companions, he knew that if the other party was able to get rid of the 4 of them without making a sound, they could also pose a threat to him. Therefore, he wanted to use this kid to escape. Even if he couldn't escape, he could exchange a life for a life. Page Ye, who had been crying until he hiccuped, started crying and calling for his parents like the other children. Were Dad and the others really outside? But why didn't they come out? Even if they came out to negotiate, why wasn't there any movement? If only there were really superhumans in this world. Pagea thought. Pagea caught a glimpse of something from the corner of his eye and turned to look. At the place where the person's back was facing, beside a cage, behind a small wooden box, a black figure gradually appeared. The camping lights were still on. Pagea's vision had long adapted to the light here. He wasn't nearsighted, so he could see clearly. Ears, tail. It was a cat. A cat standing on its feet. A black cat that was standing and holding an automatic pencil. Chapter 412. A cat that stood up was not a rare sight. Pagea had seen quite a few in his own village, but he had never seen a cat that stood up and walked out of the darkness with a serious expression on its face, while holding an automatic pencil. Pagea forgot about his fear at that moment, and stood there in a daze. Noticing Pagea's strange behavior, the man quickly turned around. Unfortunately, as soon as he moved, a bullet was shot at him, and he could no longer raise the gun in his hand. His other hand, which was originally holding Pagea's collar, was now loosened. How could there be other people? How did they appear? Why didn't he hear anything? Now he finally understood why his accomplices outside had been taken care of without a sound. It was impossible to guard against them. He hadn't even seen their faces. He had thought that in such a relatively enclosed place, no one would be able to enter without a sound. He had thought that even if he couldn't escape, he could at least drag another life down with him. He had thought. The man who was shot thought a lot at that moment, but there were many things he didn't have time to think about. He felt as if he had just been sent flying by a man who was much stronger than him, and then he had been punched and kicked repeatedly. He seemed to have hallucinated, as if he was still in his mother's womb and hadn't been born yet. He also felt that the lower half of his body was separated from his original body, and then he lost consciousness. This series of feelings, in fact, only happened in that instant. Pagea was still a little stunned. He turned his head mechanically, looking at the man on the ground, and then turned to look at the black cat holding the mechanical pencil. Then he jumped away and took a few steps back. He continued to stare alternately at the man on the ground and the black cat. Zheng Tan was having a headache. He had originally planned to quietly take care of the last person without letting Pagea know. He had deliberately chosen a position with their backs facing them, but he hadn't expected Pagea to turn his head when he was being carried. Zheng Tan had been worried that the stun bullet would hurt Pagea, but now it seemed that the stun bullet could only take care of one person at a time. Zheng Tan touched the body of the pen. There was still a stun bullet in the cylinder on his back. Judging from the situation just now, the stun bullet was quite effective. Should he give this kid one and tell him that it was an illusion when he woke up? Pagea shivered and suddenly felt a little cold. He looked around and thought that it must be because he was in the shed and didn't see the sun. That was why he felt so gloomy. Because of this, Pagea came back to his senses. No matter what was wrong with the black cat, what Pagea wanted to do the most now was to escape from this place. Inside the shed, there was the smell of blood. This was caused by the man who killed the 4 animals. Now that Pagea had regained his senses, he wanted to vomit when he smelled the stench mixed with the smell of blood. However, he did not dare to lift the cloth and run out of the shed. Who knew if there were any dangerous people outside? Pagea had no choice but to look at Zheng Tan again. Black. Black. Charcoal. Pagea stammered out those few words. Zheng Tan put the pen back on his back, and decided not to kill Pagea for the time being. He also left a bullet in case of future trouble. If the people who were killed woke up, he could use the bullet to kill as many as he could. As for what Pagea did just now, Mao and Celestine should have known that he was different from other cats. As for Pei Liang, he saved his son. He wouldn't bite the hand that fed him, right? He was brothers with Mao and Celestine, so his character should be guaranteed. Human lives were the most important thing. They should choose to keep secrets. Forget it. Don't think too much about it. Escaping from here was the most important thing. Pagea was smart. He didn't rush out directly, which made Zheng Tan a little satisfied. He knew what was good and bad, and he could choose the safest and most correct way. He should be able to keep a secret, right? Zheng Tan crawled out of the tent and looked around. The people who were tied up in the tent were still motionless. Zheng Tan jumped up a tree to observe the surroundings, then returned to the tent. When he looked back into the tent, Zheng Tan couldn't help but shiver. He found that Pei Jie had already taken the gun and dagger from the people on the ground. Looking at the way he was fiddling with the gun, this kid probably wanted to shoot a few more times. The little kid who was crying and hiccuping a few minutes ago was now acting like he was the winner. Zheng Tan suddenly understood why Pei Liang's family couldn't control this kid. With a gun, Pei Jie wasn't so afraid now. He had actually played with a shotgun before. There were a few old hunters in the village who had learned how to hunt with a shotgun. Pei Liang had also taught them. Although the gun in his hand was different from the ones in the village, Pei Jie was no stranger to this feeling. Some children were born not afraid of these things, and it was easier for them to accept them. For the current Pei Jie, the gun was still a little heavy, and it was difficult to hold it. Before Zheng Tan came back, he had been vigilant of the people on the ground, afraid that they would jump up again. Pei Jie's face lit up when he saw Zheng Tan. He had thought it through. No matter what the cat's background was, as long as they were on the same side, it would be fine. The cat had just saved his life and defeated the steel-like enemy, so he could rely on it. When Zheng Tan was outside, he had already put the last stun bullet into the pen. The cylinder that held the bullets had also been put back into the treasure chest, so now he only had a pen on his back. However, Pei Jie's attention wasn't on it, so he didn't notice any difference. Zheng Tan tilted his head and signaled Pei Jie to follow. He then lifted the tent that wasn't fixed and crawled out. Pei Jie followed Zheng Tan and crawled out. When he crawled out, he made a little noise, but fortunately he wasn't as big as an adult, so he could still crawl out. After he got out, he didn't forget to take the gun with him. Zheng Tan led the way in front, while Pei Liang carefully followed behind. He knew that his hearing wasn't as good as Zheng Tan's, so he just followed silently. He didn't doubt Zheng Tan's judgment. Zheng Tan remembered the places where the people he had defeated were. He just had to avoid those places and leave with Pei Jie. While walking, Zheng Tan suddenly stopped. His ears twitched, and he looked diagonally in front of him. Seeing Zheng Tan like this, Pei Jie quickly found a place to hide. He thought that Zheng Tan had found the enemy. Zheng Tan didn't give Pei Jie any instructions. Instead, he quickly jumped onto a tree and looked in that direction. Although there were many trees of different heights blocking his view, he could still see a few flashing figures. The one in front was a touch of brown. Happy, Zheng Tan didn't walk forward. He lay on the branch and looked in that direction. Pei Jie, who was hiding behind the bushes, didn't understand Zheng Tan's reaction. But soon he thought of a possibility. Black charcoal. Pei Jie whispered. When he saw Zheng Tan looking over, he continued, "Is it my dad and the others?" Zheng Tan thought for a moment and nodded. "Huh." Pei Jie couldn't help but laugh. He jumped out of the bushes and climbed up the tree that Zheng Tan had just climbed. When Pei Liang ran over with his heart in his mouth, he saw Pei Jie, that brat, carrying a gun and hugging the trunk of a tree. He looked at them and grinned happily. Pei Jie's clothes were already dirty beyond recognition, and he looked very disheveled. His little face was tanned from running outside in the hot sun, and there was a lot of mud and grass on it. His hair was also messy, as if he was running away from a disaster. Pei Liang's eyes turned sour when he saw this. He rushed over and caught Pei Jie, who jumped down from the tree, and hugged him tightly. Seeing that Pei Jie was healthy and didn't lose an arm or a leg, although he looked a little miserable, he was fine and in good spirits. Mao and Celestine sighed in relief. Celestine first replied to the old man so that he wouldn't worry, but he didn't say much. He knew that the situation was a little complicated. "It's good that you're fine." Pei Liang was a little choked up. He took a few deep breaths to calm down. After he calmed down, Pei Liang first checked Pei Jie's injuries. Seeing that they were all small scratches and no other injuries, he was relieved. He passed some food to Pei Jie and applied some medicine to some of Pei Jie's wounds. Then he remembered and asked, "Where's the person who took you? How did you get out?" Pei Jie wiped his nose on Pei Liang's clothes and raised his finger to point at the tree. Pei Liang looked up and saw a familiar-looking black cat lying there. Mao and Celestine had an as expected look on their faces, but they were still very curious as to how it was done. Being questioned, Page Ye was a little hesitant. Should he say or not? Let's find the person who took Page Ye first, said Air Mao. If they wanted to find the person, they could only let Zheng Tan lead the way. Air Mao let Big Mountain rest first. Big Mountain was really tired from the journey. He even slipped when he climbed the tree, but only on the tree did he feel safe. Big Mountain rested. Zheng Tan brought Air Mao and Celestine over. Pei Liang stayed there temporarily to look after Page Ye and Big Mountain. Half an hour later, in the open space beside the tent, 5 people were tied up and thrown there. Celestine held 5 bullets and studied them. They were all taken from the tied-up people in front of him. Celestine clicked his tongue twice and said to Zheng Tan, "Capable, you're getting more and more capable. Does your cat father know that you're so awesome?" Zheng Tan squatted at the side and looked down at the ants on the ground without replying. Anyway, he had done a meritorious deed this time. He didn't expect Celestine to thank him. He just wanted to help cover up this matter. After knowing each other for so long, Air Mao and Celestine should know the Jiao family's strategy of keeping a low profile. Zheng Tan was only responsible for hiding his merit and reputation. Meanwhile, Air Mao was studying the pen that Zheng Tan was carrying just now. Beside him was a box. Zheng Tan had already opened the box and let them see what was inside. Zheng Tan wanted Air Mao and Celestine to help cover up the aftermath. He chose to tell them more things so that they could make up a story to explain the situation. Where did he get this toy? Celestine looked at Air Mao. Air Mao was the one who carried the box along the way. I heard that a child in Beijing gave it to Black Coal. Air Mao was also shocked. When did children's toys evolve to such a level? He had to ask the Jiao family when he got back. Okay, I'll call Senior Pei and the others over and discuss how to make up this story. Air Mao put down the box and walked into the forest. Hearing Air Mao's words, Zheng Tan was relieved. Although Air Mao was sometimes unreliable, he would definitely do what he said. When the person who was hit by the stun bomb woke up, he felt his whole body twisting. He heard someone talking, but he couldn't make out what it was. His muscles were still trembling and spasming. His face looked as if someone had injected him with Novocaine. His lips trembled, but he couldn't say a word. His lower lip felt like it was weighed down by dozens of kilograms. When Pei Liang saw that the person who took his son was waking up, he didn't show any mercy and punched him. The person who had just regained consciousness fainted again. In fact, Pei Liang also wanted to give this person a good beating. He even thought of quietly getting rid of him in the wilderness. Later, he dismissed the idea. He could go through legal channels to get this person to accept the death penalty, or be locked in prison for the rest of his life, but he couldn't privately get rid of him here. Page Ye was still here. While Air Mao and the other 2 were discussing how to make up a story, Page Ye was thinking about how to get the gun back from his father. "Dad, give me the gun. I don't want the bullets." "No way." Page Ye wasn't convinced. "I gave it to you." Pei Liang didn't even look at him and replied, "Stop bullsh asterisk ting." Page Ye stiffened his neck and wanted to argue, but he choked and didn't say anything. It was true that he didn't give it to him completely. He only snatched it back after black charcoal knocked him to the ground. But no matter what, he snatched it from the enemy with his own hands. Chapter 413. The man who was knocked down by Zheng Tan's stun grenade had killed 4 animals. Air Mao had already found the items taken out from the bodies of the animals. As for the last survivor, the red panda with a dumb face, it was brought back to the yard with them. Uncle Lin, a senior veterinarian, was in the courtyard. He was good at everything. Uncle Lin also had a set of surgical tools at home, and a specially built operating room for major animal surgery. 2 days after the operation, the red panda began to be energetic again. Uncle Lin's good skills were one of the reasons. The key was that the little guy's vitality was really strong. After the wound got better, Uncle Lin took it to the courtyard for a walk. Uncle Lin said that the red panda was only 1 year old. It was considered an underage child in this species. Probably before it was caught by those people, the mother beast drove it away not long ago. It was not used to living on its own. Now that it followed Uncle Lin, it found the feeling of living a leisurely life with the mother beast. As long as it was not driven away, it would stay here. This red panda was very close to Uncle Lin. Uncle Lin did not use a rope or something like that to tie it up. It also did not run around. Without Uncle Lin's instructions, it had been following him. The wound from the operation gradually began to heal, and it had no intention of running away. Thinking about it, it made sense. Staying at Uncle Lin's place, it had food, drinks, and was carefully taken care of. No one pointed a gun at it, so it did not have to worry about anything. Every day, its favorite thing was to sit on a tree and eat a big apple. After eating, it would find a place with the sun to sit and start rubbing its face. Uncle Lin was not worried that it would go missing. Usually this little guy was very clean and did not poop everywhere. Zheng Tin always thought that this guy's habit of rubbing its face was actually just a habit of wiping its mouth with its palm or washing the hair around its mouth clean after eating. It was just like how cats would lick their paws and wipe their faces after eating. Because of this, Uncle Lin felt that it was quite easy to raise it. Usually he could take this little guy for a walk around, which was better than walking alone. Therefore, Uncle Lin greeted a familiar manager of the animal farm and applied for some certificates to keep the red panda there first. The reason was to observe it after the operation to prevent it from becoming ill. The people at the zoo didn't have any objections. Anyway, there were many red pandas in the zoo. One less wouldn't make a difference. It was just an insignificant matter to them. They just casually opened the door to ask for a favor. Uncle Lin said that this little panda was really lucky to be able to survive. Of the 5 animals that were locked up, it was the only one that survived. After surviving a great disaster, one was bound to have good fortune in the future. Therefore he named this little guy Xiaofu, and after a while, it became Xiaofu. The criminals were taken away by the police, and their weapons and drugs were confiscated. When the person who was knocked down by Zheng Tan with an electric shock bomb pleaded guilty, he insisted on asking who was in the tent at that time. He thought about it a lot, but still couldn't guess who it was. He also analyzed the whole thing and found out which step went wrong to cause the final outcome. However, he would never have thought that his 2 biggest mistakes were that he was greedy for money, and that he didn't know that there was a cat called Zheng Tan in this world. Pei Jie had also been questioned, but this child had been told by his father what to say and what not to say. He was also very good at lying. Moreover, when he was questioned by the police, he didn't know when, but he began to cry. The tears came as he wished. Pei Jie temporarily kicked aside the words, "Men bleed but don't cry," and said that this was called strategic crying, which was within the acceptable range. The person in charge of questioning Pei Jie didn't ask any more questions in the end. Don't underestimate children, never underestimate these little brats. Sometimes they are much more scheming than adults think. Pei Jie also promised Zheng Tan afterward that in order to repay the favor of saving his life, he would keep the truth of the matter hidden. A good man is loyal and never betrays. In fact, Pei Liang looked quite upright. It was a pity that Pei Jie didn't inherit his father's sense of justice. Instead, he got himself into trouble. When Pei Liang and Pei Jie were alone, Pei Liang wanted to comfort the child to prevent him from having any psychological trauma from his childhood. However, he found that this child's nerves were too strong. Other than a small obstacle, he was very good. Even when he talked about what happened at that time, he was able to speak clearly. Not only was his words clear, but he also knew how to exaggerate. It was like telling a story. What was clearly a very normal thing became a fantasy in his mouth. After being warned by Pei Liang several times, Pei Jie finally stopped his wild thoughts. "I was really scared at that time. Dad, you don't know. In the pitch-black shed, all I could smell was the smell of the monkey and the red panda's feces and urine. All I could see was the cold steel cage and the stupid red panda next to it," Pei Jie said. Hearing this, Pei Liang was immediately dissatisfied. He frowned and said, "What are you talking about? That's not stupid, that's charmingly naive." "Oh, it's the spring and autumn calligraphy that you mentioned before. I felt uneasy when I saw its charmingly naive look. Can the word uneasy be used?" Pei Liang was speechless. Pei Liang took a deep breath and was about to say something when Pei Jie raised his hand and pointed in a direction. He followed Pei Jie's finger and looked over. Not far from the 2 of them, Big Mountain was playing with an apple. His 2 paws moved back and forth like a ball. In front of Big Mountain stood the red panda. Its eyes were fixed on the apple that Big Mountain was moving, and its head moved left and right. Big Mountain was obviously teasing the red panda. After moving the apple back and forth a few times, it jumped onto the wooden table in the yard with the apple in its mouth. Then it placed the apple on the edge of the wooden table so that the red panda could see, but not touch it. Big Mountain squatted by the side and watched. The wooden table was just a little higher for the red panda. Therefore, the guy stood up and raised his two front paws, jumping to grab the apple on the edge of the table. At this time, Pejia shouted in the tone of a palace eunuch on TV, "Xiao Fuzi," the red panda, who was jumping around the table, turned its head, but its movements were unstable. Because of this distraction, it leaned back and sat on the ground, flipping over. Pejia retracted his gaze and said to Pei Liang, "Hey, it's charmingly naive." Pei Liang didn't speak. Seeing that Pei Liang was about to get angry, Pejia quickly changed the topic. "Hey Dad, even if Chi Dada was there, he might not have done better than black charcoal. That cat is really awesome. Why don't we raise one at home? Especially the pure black ones." Pei Liang snorted. "Do you think that every black cat is black charcoal?" "That's true. Just like there's only one Chi Dada, there's only one black charcoal. One is enough." Pei Liang said in his heart, "One cat can handle such a thing. If there's another one, won't the sky be turned upside down?" Gradually, the day of return gradually came. The originally scheduled return time had actually passed. Because of this incident, they stayed here for another week. After settling everything here, everyone planned to return. Mao and the others didn't tell the old man about the facts in the forest this time. But who was the old man? When Mao and the others raised their tails, the old man knew what they were going to do. Even if they hid it well, the old man still knew that there was an inside story. But it didn't matter. Now that the boys had started their own families and careers, they knew right and wrong. He believed that these few disciples wouldn't ask too much. They just needed to help behind the scenes. However, the old man would never think that all of this was because of a black cat. The matter of using animals to transport illegal materials would continue to be investigated for a while. This time, it was estimated that some people would be removed from the top, but that was no longer Zheng Tan's business. The problematic zoo was closed down, and the animals inside were sent to several other zoos with more standardized management. It was also because of this incident that the higher-ups issued new policies again, putting forward higher requirements for zoos and stricter monitoring of management. When the three cars left the courtyard, Zheng Tan looked out of the rear window. The morning sun had already come out and shone on the land. Red Panda, who had just finished breakfast, was sitting on a big rock near the courtyard and rubbing its face. At the courtyard gate, the old man, Uncle Lin and Big Mountain stood there, watching the three cars drive away. The morning sun shone on them, and their silhouettes were gilded. When Zheng Tan returned to Chuhua City, it was already December. During this period of time, the temperature in Chuhua City had plummeted. When Zheng Tan left, there were still people wearing short sleeves, but now they were wearing thick jackets. Every time he came back from a long trip, Zheng Tan felt very calm and at ease. It was as if his impetuousness had settled down. Knowing that Zheng Tan was coming back today, the Jiaopa specially came back from the Institute of Biological Sciences. He first looked at Zheng Tan. He didn't lose weight and looked very energetic. It seemed that he had a good time outside. Mao didn't tell the Jiao family about the incident. He only asked a few more questions when he handed over Zheng Tan's treasure chest. Seeing that the Jiaopa didn't seem to know the inside story, Mao couldn't help but ask, "Mr. Jiao, aren't you curious about what's in the box?" The Jiaopa was carrying the box and bag upstairs. When he heard Mao's question, he said, "I'm curious, but I respect their privacy." In the family, whether it was Jiao Yuan, Little Pomelo, or Zheng Tan, Jiaopa wouldn't force him to see the things that they kept. Mao secretly curled its lips. Even a cat had the right to privacy. However, after hearing that the box was related to the third Master Feng's family, Mao began to ponder. Should he get a similar set of equipment for his daughter? In the future, if he met any stupid brats, he would shoot them. When Zheng Tan returned home, he felt that it was still the same as when he left last month. The smell that belonged to Jiao Yuan was very faint, and the smell that belonged to Little Pomelo was also very faint. Today was Thursday, and the weekend was coming. Little Pomelo would be back soon, and so would Jiao Yuan. After packing up his things and exchanging Zheng Tan's cat tag, the Jiao Pa still had to go to the Institute of Biological Sciences. Before he left, he said to Zheng Tan, "I'm going to the institute. Mao said that you ate this morning, and it's not lunchtime yet. If you're hungry, find something to eat first. The things are still in the same place." After the Jiao Pa left, Zheng Tan lay on the sofa and stretched. Although he was tired from the long journey, he still didn't feel sleepy. He walked to the balcony and looked at the balcony next door. Chu Xiangyang had moved away a long time ago and bought a big house outside. He was now a father, but he was still a homebody. On the balcony next door, there were no more StarCraft, Spider-Man, Star Wars, SpongeBob SquarePants t-shirts. Instead, there were some female students' clothes. The house next door was rented to 3 graduate students of Chu Xiangyang's parents. They were all female students. Chu Xiangyang had helped to clean up the house and killed 6 cockroaches and other insects. Chu Xiangyang's parents rented the house to the female students because they saw how Chu Xiangyang had messed up the house. At least the female students would be more fastidious and wouldn't turn a good house into a dog kennel. Zheng Tan had seen the 3 female students before. They looked okay. In fact, he was used to seeing them and felt that they were not bad. They had good temperament and good character. Sometimes they would invite Zheng Tan over to play and share some food with him. They were all good people. In fact, the 3 female students liked General the most. It was a pity that General had been taken to the south for the winter. Otherwise, they would often hear General singing love songs downstairs. Everyone in the building made fun of Professor Tan, making him feel awkward a few times. Professor Tan felt wronged. Those love songs, especially those very explicit ones, were mostly not taught by him. After basking in the sun on the balcony for a while, Zheng Tan still didn't feel sleepy. He decided to go downstairs for a walk. Depeng wasn't at home. Old Madam had taken him to visit relatives. Huang was playing with Little Blossom and Niu Zhuangzhuang on the grass. The sheriff, there was no sign of him. Zheng Tan walked around and came to Old Man Land's small flower garden. In front of Zheng Tan, a student on a small 3-wheeled motorcycle knocked on the door. Then, 3 types of dog barks came from inside. Zheng Tan walked over and poked her head inside. Chapter 414. Sheriff had been with these 2 dogs for a long time. Even his barks were closer to those of 2 puppies. It was no wonder that Zheng Tan didn't recognize it just now. After not seeing each other for more than a month, the 2 little mutt puppies had grown a lot. Qian Li's fur had turned a lot yellow, while Shen Feng's markings had become more distinct. Sheriff was still the same as before. "Shunzi, come back." Inside the flower shed, Old Man Lon called out. Old Man Lon still called the tabby puppy Shunzi, but to the students who often came to the small flower garden, they preferred to call it Shunfeng. The students always preferred the more interesting option. Moreover, when they called it Shunfeng, Old Man Lon didn't get angry and just let them call it. With Qianli around, anyone would think of the name Shunfeng. Every time the students called it Shunfeng, they would laugh as they did so, with a sense of teasing. However, Shunfeng didn't pay attention to anyone other than Old Man Lon. A month ago, Old Man Lon had bought 2 puppies. He liked the little yellow dog Qianli more, but soon, Old Man Lon realized that Shunzi was more alert when it came to watching the house. Qianli almost always followed Shunzi's lead. When Shunzi barked, it would bark too. However, every time someone came, Qianli would rush to the front even though it would bark later. Shunzi didn't look very lively, but it was the most alert. Qianli ran at the front, belonging to the type that used brute force. As for Sheriff, it was just there to join in the fun. The more Old Man Lon looked at the 2 puppies, the more he liked them. As for the extra cat, forget it. He would just treat it as raising 2.5 dogs. Sheriff's owner raised such a cat. It was really worth it. One could do 2. It could catch mice like a cat, and even act as a dog to watch the house. After the door to the small flower garden opened, the student pushed the cart in. When Shunzi saw the person, it wagged its tail and crawled back. It knew this person, and with Old Man Lon here, there was nothing for it to do. Qianli barked a few times, but when it saw that it was the only one barking, it felt bored. However, it didn't crawl back and followed Old Man Lon and the student back and forth. Yo, black charcoal is back? When Old Man Lon saw Zheng Tan, the smile on his face deepened as he invited Zheng Tan in. Zheng Tan also planned to go in to see the changes inside. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him from behind. He turned his head and saw Xiong Xiong waving at him on his bicycle at the turn of the road in front of the small flower garden. Zheng Tan's first reaction when he saw Xiong Xiong was that he had skipped class again. Why did he say again? This was because Zheng Tan had met Xiong Xiong, who had skipped class several times when he was strolling around the school. Old Man Lon heard it too. He walked out of the door and saw that it was Xiong Xiong. He waved at Zheng Tan and said, Go on, go on. Since you're back, come back when you're free." Zheng Tan walked over. He didn't know what Xiong Xiong wanted. Ever since Xiong Xiong was the only one in the east courtyard, Xiong Xiong wasn't used to it at first. However, after 3 months he got used to it. After all, he was still in a familiar territory. It was just that he felt a little lonely without his friends by his side. Xiong Xiong pushed the bicycle and asked Zheng Tan to follow while talking to Zheng Tan. They grew up together and had a good relationship with Jiao Yuan. They knew a little about Zheng Tan. Therefore, when they talked to Zheng Tan, they didn't talk to him like how they would talk to other cats or dogs. Instead, they talked to him more like how they would talk to a human. It turned out that Xiong Xiong had taken a fancy to a first-year girl from Beijing Normal University. He met her when he went to Beijing Normal University with Fu Lei in September. Now Xiong Xiong was in the process of pursuing her. He would send flowers to Beijing Normal University at this time every day. The flower shop that Xiong Xiong ordered flowers was on the street between Tsinghua University and Beijing Normal University. It was said that the flowers in that shop were the best. It was also quite famous in the area. Many students from Beijing Normal University and Tsinghua University went there to order flowers. However, Xiong Xiong heard from his roommate that he had to send flowers personally. This was the only way to show his sincerity to the girl. Therefore, Xiong Xiong would go to the flower shop every day to get flowers and deliver them to Beijing Normal University. Tsinghua University was not too far from Beijing Normal University. Zheng Tan had followed an old man there before. He felt that it was too far for him to walk. However, it was different if he rode a bicycle. He could reach the university in no time. However, there was a section of road that was under construction. If he rode a bicycle, he would be covered in dirt. To protect his image, Xiong Xiong would ride to the flower shop to get flowers, and then take a taxi to Beijing Normal University. Xiong Xiong was troubled by the fact that the security around the flower shop was not very good. There were often thieves and car thieves. Last week, he asked a newsstand owner to look after his car. But when he came back, his car was gone. It was not reliable. Xiong Xiong pushed the bicycle and complained to Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan sighed. The little brat who sent flowers to his mother during the Valentine's Day now knew how to be romantic. But Xiong Xiong's pursuit seemed to be more difficult. Until now, he still had not found a girlfriend. Xiong Xiong was the worst out of the 4 of them in the courtyard. When Xiong Xiong went to Beijing Normal University to woo girls, people would give him a thumbs up when they heard that he was from Tsinghua University. But it was a pity that Xiong Xiong had only met the girl for the second time, and he had already admitted that he was a genius. But in this era, those who could use connections to get in through the back door were considered to have a golden finger. Others could not even get a golden finger even if they wanted to. No matter what the girl thought of Xiong Xiong, at least she did not reject him directly. This meant that Xiong Xiong still had hope. Xiong Xiong did not dare to tell his mother about this. He decided to wait until he successfully wooed the girl before reporting to the Empress Dowager and requesting for more supplies. Most of the parents in China were very interesting. Before entering university, they would tell their children not to fall in love early and not to do this and that with the opposite sex. Whenever they see someone of the opposite sex who had a good relationship with their children, they would try to find out more. They wanted to nip this in the bud. But once the college entrance exams were over and their children went to university, they would start to talk about if there was someone of the opposite sex they had a good relationship with. When would they bring her home to meet? And so on and so forth. Why did so many children want to graduate from high school as soon as possible? Because after graduation he would be able to pick up girls under orders, and he would be able to do so openly. Also, they would have a strong supply of supplies. Xiong's mother knew that Xiong did not keep track of how much money he spent, so she kept a tight lid on Xiong's money. Now, in order to woo girls, Xiong spent most of his money on taxis and flowers in addition to his daily expenses. Now that he had just bought a new bicycle, none of his classmates would skip class to help him look after the bicycle. Originally, Xiong planned to spend money to hire someone near the flower shop to look after the bicycle. After all, with money as the foundation, the other party would not slack off. But when he turned around and dug into his pocket, Xiong realized that he was short on funds. Today he happened to see Zheng Tan. Therefore, Xiong's brain, which was usually not very fast, suddenly worked and came up with a brilliant idea. Let the cat look after the bicycle. It would only take more than an hour to go back and forth. It would be just in time for dinner, and would not delay Zheng Tan's meal. Zheng Tan did not have a problem. Anyway, he had nothing to do. It was rare to see Xiong like this, so he decided to help him. My mom said that I lack gold in my 5 elements, so I spend the money I get in 2 days. But I don't think so. Xiong said. Zheng Tan thought, how is it that you lack gold in your 5 elements? It's clearly that you lack a nerve. I feel that I lack color in my 5 elements. I'm obviously handsome and extraordinary. Why is it so difficult for girls to fall for me? Zheng Tan. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that this person was not handsome at all. As for extraordinary, Xiong was 1.8 meters tall and weighed 180 kilograms. Oh, this was last year's weight. Because the 3rd year of high school consumed too much energy, his weight decreased slightly. After the 3rd year of high school, this guy's weight directly broke through 190 kilograms and went straight to 200 kilograms. This person was not the muscular type. Walking out of the school gate, Xiong passed by a dumpling shop and saw the boss rolling out dumpling skins. Xiong pretended to be mature and sighed. Sigh, my rolling pin is gone forever. Speaking of the rolling pin, this was a legendary incident in the East Courtyard. In the past, there was an old lady in the East Courtyard. Once, the old lady planned to make dumplings at home and did not have a rolling pin, so she went out to buy one. When she returned, she encountered a thief. After the old lady discovered it, she used the rolling pin in her bag to hit the thief. The old lady, who was in her 70s, was actually quite good at hitting people. One of the thief's front teeth was knocked out. Later, the thief was caught by the crowd and sent to the police station. However, this incident was spread by some people in the neighborhood. The more it spread, the more mysterious it became. The old lady used the rolling pin to hit the thief. It was as if Sun Wukong used the golden cudgel to kill demons. The adults only exaggerated the story and told it as a joke, but the children took it seriously. They regarded the rolling pin as a divine weapon. Whoever had a rolling pin in their bag would brag more loudly than others. However, Xiong's group of children grew up and knew more things. They also knew how to make full use of exaggeration. When they grew up, they also knew that many things were not as they thought. However, many people would continue to say and do such things to reminisce about their lost childhood. Who didn't do a few funny things when they were young? Therefore, even though Xiong did not use the rolling pin as a weapon, he kept it. In the end, one day, his mother found it and threw it away. His mother said, "What are you trying to do by hiding a rolling pin? Can you help us roll out the dough?" The flower shop was a bit far from the school gate. It was about 10 minutes by car. Xiong asked Zheng Tan to squat in the car basket. Zheng Tan did not do it. Recently, he had been sitting in the car for too long. It was good to run. Xiong slowed down the car and led Zheng Tan to the flower shop. After arriving at the flower shop, Xiong parked the car in front of a communication business hall. There were some cars parked there. Okay, just leave it here. There are not many people here. Xiong locked the car and said. Zheng Tan looked around. There were many people going in and out of the shops here. Indeed, there were fewer people here. There was no special parking lot nearby. There was no one to look after the cars. No wonder Xiong was in a difficult position. After Xiong went into the flower shop to get the flowers he ordered, he looked at the time and quickly ran to stop a taxi. Zheng Tan squatted on the bicycle seat and watched Xiong's rental car leave. He thought to himself, "Go ahead, Xiong Xiong, I can only help you to this point." There was a bus stop not far from where the car was parked. There were some people waiting for the bus. A young man was eating bread and standing there with a bag on his back. He looked around aimlessly. When his eyes swept over Zheng Tan, the young man paused. He looked at the road and made sure that there was no car coming. Then he walked towards Zheng Tan. After walking in front of Zheng Tan, the man took 2 bites of the bacon bread. He raised his hand and pulled out the bacon on the bread and handed it to Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan looked at the bacon in front of his nose and ignored it. "You're not eating?" Seeing that Zheng Tan was not eating, the man threw the bacon in his hand into his mouth and tore off some bread and handed it over. Chapter 4:15. Zheng Tan continued to ignore the bread in front of him. Seeing that Zheng Tan really wasn't eating anything, the man in front of him stuffed the torn bread into his mouth. He quickly glanced at the bus stop to see if the bus he was waiting for was coming. Seeing that there wasn't, he continued to stand there. After finishing all the bread in his hand, he reached out to touch Zheng Tan's cat head, but Zheng Tan dodged him. Zheng Tan was impatient. This person really didn't have any eyesight. If he was waiting for the bus, he should have just waited for the bus. Why did he come here? Was he trying to provoke him? There were many people like this who wanted to touch cats when they saw them. They didn't know that many cats actually didn't want to be disturbed. Of course, some wanted to play with people, but Zheng Tan was definitely not one of them. If it weren't for the fact that he had to watch Xiong Xiong's car, Zheng Tan would have run away long ago. Zheng Tan really wanted to punch him, but it didn't seem good to do so in public. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan's resentment was obviously not understood by the man. He reached out to try again, but Zheng Tan couldn't help but slap his hand away a few times. It wasn't until the bus he was waiting for arrived that the man withdrew his hand and hurriedly squeezed into the bus. Seeing that the man finally left, Zheng Tan breathed a sigh of relief. People like the man just now were more fond of cats. Usually, when they saw stray cats or domestic cats wandering outside, they would approach them. Other cats were lucky to meet such people, but Zheng Tan didn't want to meet such people because they were very clingy and difficult to chase away. Even if they were scratched, they wouldn't be angry. Zheng Tan couldn't resist this kind of enthusiasm. Zheng Tan once saw a beautiful girl play with a cat that was squatting by a flower bed. As a result, she was scratched by the cat while playing with the cat. A few bloody marks appeared on the back of her white and tender hand, but the girl wasn't angry. She didn't complain or kick the cat. Just as she was thinking about it, Zheng Tan noticed another person approaching. This time, it was 2 young women who were walking together. They were probably students from a nearby university. These 2 were even more enthusiastic than the backpack man. However, Zheng Tan saw that the 2 of them were quite good-looking, so she let them touch her twice. But it was only twice. In order to watch Xiong Xiong's car, Zheng Tan sacrificed his body. Xiong Xiong was complaining about the lack of color. Zheng Tan, while complaining that there were too many people coming over to harass him, he was quite proud of himself. "Look, when I was squatting here, the girls came of their own accord." More than an hour later, Xiong Xiong ran back, drenched in sweat. Originally, he had planned to take a taxi, but money was tight recently, so Xiong Xiong ran back directly. He thought of it as losing weight. Along the way, he passed through a section of the road that was under construction. There was a lot of dust on his body, and some dust could be seen on his hair. Coupled with the sweat on his forehead, he looked a little embarrassed. But now that he had delivered the flowers, no matter how embarrassed he was, he couldn't see his sweetheart anymore. So Xiong Xiong felt at ease. When Xiong Xiong came over, it was already the 4th group of female students in front of Zheng Tan. However, when the female students in front of Zheng Tan saw Xiong Xiong approaching, they ignored Zheng Tan and pulled the people around them away quickly. This made Xiong Xiong very depressed. Xiong Xiong bought a 1 yuan bottle of purified water and drank a few mouthfuls. He sat in the back seat and complained to Zheng Tan. "Black charcoal, why do you think those girls are hiding when they see me?" Zheng Tan glanced at Xiong Xiong, whose face was covered in dust, his hair was messy, and his body was still quite oppressive. He jumped out of the car and planned to leave. It was time for dinner, so it was time to go back. After returning home, Jiao Ma cooked a good meal to celebrate Zheng Tan's return. As for being lifted up and hugged, She was used to it and didn't feel awkward. Jiaoma also said that before Zheng Tan left the house, it was a lot quieter. She was the only one watching TV. There were a few times when she was excited and wanted to turn her head and talk to the people beside her, but she realized that there was no one sitting next to her. There was also no cat lying there. At that time, Jiaoma was very sad. She counted the days every day, counting how many days until little Pomelo came back, how many days until Zheng Tan came back, and how many days until Jiao Yuan came back. Now, even if only Zheng Tan came back, Jiaoma was very happy. When she watched TV, she laughed even louder. Every time she watched TV, she would share her laughs with Zheng Tan. Even if Zheng Tan couldn't respond, Jiaoma would still talk about it with great interest. If Zheng Tan showed a wooden face, Zheng Tan's forehead would be poked by the Jiaoma. Watching TV with a parent was not an easy thing to do. Poking one's forehead was something that one had to get used to. The next day, Xiong skipped class to look for Zheng Tan again. Zheng Tan went over to look for his car again. At the same time, at the same bus stop, Zheng Tan saw the young man with the backpack again. The young man was eating a bun as he looked around. When his eyes landed on Zheng Tan, they lit up. He smiled kindly and ran over. Zheng Tan. Just like yesterday, the young man grabbed some meat buns and handed them to Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan ignored him as usual. Fortunately, the young man's car came quickly today. He stayed in front of Zheng Tan for less than 2 minutes before he went to take the bus. Watching the bus leave, Zheng Tan turned around and saw that there were people gathering around him after seeing him. For the next few days, Zheng Tan would see the young man with the backpack here every day. Sometimes, Zheng Tan was lucky and the young man's car came quickly. Sometimes, he was unlucky and no car came for half an hour or even longer. This young man liked to provoke others. At first, Zheng Tan didn't want to use his claws to draw blood. Later, he realized that the young man's movements were quite fast. He attacked and stopped quickly. Zheng Tan couldn't scratch him even if he wanted to. If it weren't for the fact that they were in public, Zheng Tan would have kicked him or picked up a bicycle next to him and smashed him. However, since they were on the streets, he could just hide if he couldn't provoke him. Zheng Tan began to hide, but he wouldn't go too far. He wouldn't let Xiong's car out of his sight. After a week, the people in the nearby shops all knew that at this time every day, there would be a strong man, riding a bicycle with a black cat. Then this strong man would take a taxi and leave. After he left, there would be a black cat sitting on the seat of his bicycle. No one could chase it away even if they wanted to. People who frequented this place, especially some female students, would take photos and post them on the internet. At the same time, they would also post a series of stories that they imagined. In this day and age, mobile phones were changing too quickly. The functions were getting more and more powerful, and the online communication platforms were getting more and more colorful. Many young people liked to take photos of interesting things they saw with their mobile phones and share them on the internet. Fortunately, those people only took photos of Zheng Tan and the bicycle. They didn't take photos of Xiong. Therefore, even if some people who knew Zheng Tan saw it, they would just laugh and say, "Look, this cat really looks like black charcoal." They wouldn't directly link it to Zheng Tan. After all, there weren't many people who could recognize Zheng Tan at a glance. Zheng Tan didn't wear a cat tag when he came out. Otherwise, he would definitely be recognized. On this day, Zheng Tan came to help Xiong look after his car again. Although Zheng Tan encountered a lot of troubles with this job, seeing that Xiong's progress in chasing his girlfriend was significant, he continued to persevere. Zheng Tan watched the child grow up. If he could help, he would. Besides, this was all he could help. Seeing the young man with a backpack coming from the other side of the platform, Zheng Tan's good mood dissipated again. He was helpless. Every day, he would meet this person at this time. Zheng Tan was about to jump from the seat to avoid trouble. Unexpectedly, a big tabby cat raised in a small restaurant nearby came over. The person with the backpack focused on the big tabby cat that was coming over. The big tabby cat was originally curious about Zheng Tan, but now that someone was playing with it and even scratching it, it no longer paid attention to Zheng Tan. This big tabby cat was raised very well. The owner of the restaurant obviously put a lot of effort into its food. In addition to the food, The owner of the restaurant also paid a lot of attention to this big tabby cat. The cat's fur was very clean. Obviously, the owner of the restaurant often cleaned it. A clean pet was more approachable. Probably used to being touched in the restaurant. This cat was not afraid of strangers. After being tickled a few times, it even rolled on the ground, showing its belly for people to touch. Only some domesticated cats could be so familiar with people, and a small number of domesticated cats would be like this cat. They would show their round belly in front of strangers, and let people touch them. They would let people scratch them, but they would not scratch people. When they hugged people, they would not open their paws. Someone jokingly asked the owner of the restaurant, "Isn't the cat in your restaurant too good? Does it catch mice?" The owner was not angry at other people's doubts. Instead, he was proud. Yes, why not? A few days ago, it caught all the mice in the storage room upstairs. I don't know whose mice came from, but they all hid in there and gave birth. But in the end, they all went into my cat's stomach. Many people who went to the restaurant would play with this cat, and this cat also helped the restaurant attract a lot of people. There were many small restaurants around, and the owner of the restaurant knew why some people always chose his restaurant. Because of this, he cleaned his cat and let it out to receive customers. Although it was also a common cat, the big tabby cat was slightly chubby, could roll, and could act cute. It was more approachable and likable. Once it came, it took most of the pressure off Zhengtan. However, things that were stressful for Zhengtan were not necessarily so for this cat. A's arsenic, B's honey. Things that troubled Zhengtan, this cat was happy to do. Later, every time it saw the young man with the backpack, the big tabby cat took the initiative to rub against him, because the young man with the backpack often shared his breakfast with the cat. One meat bun was quickly shared by the man and the cat, and then the second one was shared. Zhengtan squatted on the car seat and watched. There were people around who sympathized with Zhengtan, saying that the big tabby cat came over and stole all of his attention. Without comparison, the children and young people around obviously liked to play with the big tabby cat more. But Zhengtan did not feel that there was anything to sympathize with or pity about. He thought that the big tabby cat appeared too late. The bus arrived. After sharing the meat bun, the people who had shared it waved to the two cats, said bye-bye, and rushed to squeeze into the bus. The big tabby cat lifted its mouth and licked its paws. It looked up at Zhengtan, who was squatting on the car seat. It estimated the height of the back seat, gathered its strength, and jumped. Probably because it ate too much and made some mistakes, it jumped a little too low. The big tabby cat's front paws hooked onto the back seat of Xiong's bicycle. It wanted to take another step and climb up, but found that the bicycle began to tilt. Quang! The bicycle fell. Chapter 416. When Xiong came back, he looked at the chipped paint on his newly bought bicycle. He wanted to cry but had no tears. He touched the chipped paint, but there was nothing he could do. Could he blame that big tabby cat? However, chipping off a few pieces of paint was better than having his bicycle stolen. Thinking of this, Xiong suddenly felt better. Xiong's pursuit was progressing well. He even asked her out for a movie on the weekend. Although it wasn't for just the two of them, it was still progress, right? Zhengtan rarely could stay at home on the weekend. He didn't help Xiong look after his bicycle and had a good weekend. On this day, Zhengtan took a walk in school. The weekend at home was good. After little Pomelo came back, the atmosphere at home was different. It was much livelier. However, after 2 days, little Pomelo had to leave again. Other people's work days and study days, Zhengtan was bored most of the time. He jogged along the main campus road. When he was walking back, Zhengtan heard someone calling him. He turned his head and saw that it was little Jiao. He hadn't seen little Jiao for a long time. Ever since she entered high school like little Pomelo, Zhengtan hadn't seen her twice. When he went to the bridge, he didn't see her. Moreover, little Jiao didn't go to Tsinghua University affiliated high school. She went to another high school. It was far from here. It took half an hour to get there by taxi. Zhengtan couldn't go there on weekdays. However, today wasn't a rest day. It should be class time. High school students didn't have classes like university students. It seemed that little Jiao skipped class again. Little Jiao waved at Zhengtan. Black charcoal, let's talk. Because she often came here in high school, little Jiu wasn't unfamiliar with Tsinghua University's campus. She knew which places were crowded and which were empty. Zheng Tan followed little Nine to a secluded place. Little Nine sat on the edge of a circular flower bed. Zheng Tan also jumped up and squatted by the side, waiting for little Nine to speak. Generally, if there wasn't anything important, little Nine wouldn't specially come over. So Zheng Tan wanted to know why little Nine was here today. Sure enough, little Nine looked around and after confirming that there was no one around, she said, "Black charcoal, I'm leaving." Zheng Tan. Little Jiu's study arrangements were indeed different from others. She had a strong sense of purpose and knew what she wanted to do in the future. She knew what skills she had to learn. Some of the things taught in school were actually not very helpful to her, but it was impossible for her to drop out of school. She still had to learn, but she had a professional to teach her. And this time, little Jiu was going to follow her teacher to other places to learn and broaden her horizons. She didn't like to waste time. Her early experiences had a great impact on her. Now the intense studying in school was very stressful for her. She wasn't a top student and started school late, so it was difficult for her to accept some of the more profound knowledge. Of course, this was also because she wasn't interested in those things. Only with interest would there be motivation. Master Cohen also didn't force her to understand the textbook knowledge that she wasn't interested in. Therefore, according to little Jiu's interests, he arranged for people to bring little Jiu to other provinces to learn and broaden her horizons. Although there were no classes, there were people who would teach her. Master Cohen didn't raise useless people. You could have no qualifications, but you couldn't be incompetent. For little Jiu and the others, in a few years, when people of the same age stepped into society with their freshness and immaturity, she would be able to hold up a small piece of the sky by herself. That was definitely a different world from little Pomelo's, and it was also her own choice. Zheng Tan couldn't refute anything, nor would he influence little Jiu's thoughts. "I'm in my first year of high school now. My personal teacher said that I'll be out of town for 2 years. When I'm in my 3rd year of high school, I'll have to take the college entrance exam in another province. I'll take the college entrance exam back here." Little Jiu continued. It wasn't the first time Zheng Tan heard of taking advantage of the college entrance exam. He had seen it many times. Because this province had a large number of students, the college entrance exams cutoff and competition were higher than most provinces in the country. Therefore, for those who were in the middle or lower class, their families would arrange for them to take the college entrance exam in provinces that weren't very competitive. This way, they would have a higher chance of getting into a better university. Obviously, Master Cohen had spent a lot of effort on little Jiu. However, little Jiu left for more than 2 years. In these 2 years, Zheng Tan couldn't see little Jiu. Little Jiu came over today to have a good chat with Zheng Tan. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to see each other after she left. Later, she planned to go to Tsinghua-affiliated high school to see little Pomelo. She even bought candies for her. Xiao Jiu had always remembered the time when little Pomelo had sent her candies. Although she wasn't in the high school affiliated to Renmin University of China, she still knew some people there. She could get them to take care of little Pomelo so that she wouldn't forget about it just because she left. Zheng Tan listened to little Jiu's words and thought, "Is this the change from a little girl to a big sister?" After talking about her own matters for a while, recalling the past and looking forward to the future, little Jiu looked around again. After making sure that no one was coming, she whispered to Zheng Tan in a gossipy manner, "Black charcoal, do you know the 13 guardians under Master Cohen?" 13 guardians? This word was indeed familiar. Zheng Tan thought about it. He once saw a calligraphy piece in Master Cohen's study room. The words 13 guardians were written on it, and it was written very majestically. Zheng Tan remembered that he was wondering why the blind old man didn't write more domineering words or write more pretentious words like endure or kill. Other than that, when Zheng Tan was hanging out with Yi Hao and the others, he heard them talk about this word. Yi Hao and the others seemed to be very afraid. They also mentioned that one of the reasons why many people were afraid of Master Cohen was because of the 13 guardians under him. Little Jiu lowered her voice and said, "I heard that the 13 guardians were organized by Grandpa Cohen when he was young. 13 people, 13 assassins, to help Master Kuan get rid of the people on his blacklist. However, I don't hear much about it now. The people inside seem to have changed a few times. I also heard this from my teacher. It's a pity that I haven't seen any of the 13 people. Oh right, little Jiu thought of something and said to Zheng Tan. I heard that there's a person codenamed Black Cat among the 13 people. Black Charcoal. Do you think that person looks very similar to Black Cat? I really want to meet him. Zheng Tan thought to himself. He definitely didn't want to meet people like assassins. Once he heard about this profession, he knew that they weren't good people. They were cold and heartless. If he knew who an assassin was, he would definitely avoid them. Little Jiu, this girl, was getting bolder and bolder. After chatting, little Jiu looked at the time. It was time to rush to affiliated high school. If she went there now, she would be able to make it in time for lunch. After sending little Jiu onto the bus, Zheng Tan came back. After taking a few steps, he bumped into Xiong Xiong, who was riding a bicycle. This child seemed to be very happy today. Black Charcoal, help me again today. Heh, maybe after today, we'll succeed. Zheng Tan stopped and looked at Xiong Xiong. This guy's smile was really silly. If the girl really accepted Xiong Xiong, would this guy's smile be even more silly? No matter what, since it was a crucial time, Zheng Tan definitely had to help. Xiong Xiong said that he would come at 4 in the afternoon. Plus the 1 hour he had spent, he should be able to make it in time for dinner. After saying the time, at 3 in the afternoon, Zheng Tan saw Xiong Xiong dressed up. His hair was trimmed into a punk hairstyle. It was obvious that he had gone to the shampoo in the afternoon. When Zheng Tan was watching TV with Jiao Ma yesterday, there was a celebrity on TV who had this hairstyle and was severely criticized by Jiao Ma. Zheng Tan was very embarrassed because he used to like this hairstyle. He didn't expect to see Xiong Xiong with this hairstyle this afternoon. He didn't know what Jiao Ma would think when she saw it. She would probably think that there was a serious generation gap. Xiong Xiong had a smile on his face, but at the same time he was a little nervous. This guy would occasionally rub his palms on his pants to wipe off his sweat. It was winter, when most people were wearing thick cotton jackets. This guy was actually so nervous that he was sweating. Zheng Tan despised him in his heart. It was just a date and a confession. Did he have to be so nervous? At the same flower shop, Xiong Xiong picked up the flowers he had ordered and left in a car. Zheng Tan squatted on the car seat and helped to look after the car. Afraid that Zheng Tan would feel cold, Xiong Xiong put a down vest in the basket. If Zheng Tan was cold, he could squat in the basket. With Zheng Tan around, Xiong Xiong wasn't afraid that the vest would be stolen. Of course, even if the vest was stolen, Xiong Xiong still thought that it was worth it as long as he could confess again today. Because today's time was different from the previous days. Zheng Tan didn't see the young man with a bag waiting for the bus when he was here. Coincidentally, he didn't see the big tabby cat either, so he didn't have to worry about it. Zheng Tan squatted on the car seat and watched the pedestrians and cars on the road. Time gradually passed, and the sky got dark early in the winter. At 5:30 p.m., it was already dark. At 6 o'clock p.m., it was completely dark, but Xiong Xiong still didn't appear. When the night wind blew, Zheng Tan shivered, but he didn't want to jump into the basket. He continued to squat on the car seat and curse Xiong Xiong in his heart. You said 1 hour, damn, it's been almost 2 hours. I'm freezing now, and I'll be scolded if I go back late. When Xiong Xiong comes back, I'll definitely extort a lot of money from him. Zheng Tan yawned and looked at the road in the distance. Every time a taxi drove by, Zheng Tan stared at it without blinking, hoping that the taxi would stop by the side and Xiong Xiong would appear. Unfortunately, he was disappointed every time. In the distance, because a section of the road was under renovation, it wasn't smooth, and the lights of the passing cars were a bit bumpy. The flying dust wasn't as obvious in the night as it was in the day, but it made the lights of the cars seem to be covered in a layer of fog that couldn't be dispersed by the wind. After sneezing, Zheng Tan jumped out of the car and moved a bit, looking around. Because there were too many people in the restaurant, the big tabby cat was probably annoyed by the teasing and decided to come out for some fresh air. When it reached the door, it paused, shrunk its body, shook its paws, and looked around, as if it was hesitating whether to come out for the cold or not. In the end, it still stepped out, one ear on the road, while the other ear turned towards the small alley next to the restaurant. Suddenly, it seemed to have found something. A mouse came out of the square manhole cover at the side of the alley. The big tabby cat was suddenly excited, and its lazy attitude was swept away. Its muscles seemed to have tightened, and when the mouse didn't notice, it quickly moved to a more hidden corner, crouched down, and was ready to attack. Someone probably spilled food at the side of the alley, and the mouse sniffed there, looking around vigilantly. No one came, and it didn't find the big tabby cat hiding in the corner. Feeling that it was safe for the time being, it hugged a piece of food and began to eat. The big tabby cat tiptoed closer to its prey, and before the mouse could react, the big tabby cat shot at it. Although many cats were fat, sometimes they had flexibility that didn't match their body size. Meow star shadowless claw. After a series of slaps, the big tabby cat trapped the mouse, and then bit it. The mouse's pitiful cries sounded in the alley, but soon the cries stopped. A girl had just walked out of the restaurant with packed food, and when she entered the alley, she saw the big tabby cat, so she wanted to go over and play with it as usual. But when she approached, the big tabby cat suddenly raised its head and looked at the girl. There was still blood at the corner of its mouth, and it was biting on a somewhat incomplete mouse, and its eyes were still cold and murderous. This successfully stopped the girl in her tracks. The winter night wind blew, and the loosened scarf couldn't block the cold wind. The girl shrunk her neck, tightened the scarf, and quickly left. Probably, she didn't expect that the big tabby cat that she always saw, who was always lazy and had a good temper, would have such a look. At the same time, on a nearby street, passers-by were hurrying to and fro on the sidewalk. A middle-aged man wearing a high-end leather jacket with his hair combed sleekly was walking among them, holding a phone in his hand as he spoke coarsely. A young man passing by looked over curiously, and just happened to meet the middle-aged man's gaze. "Look at your grandpa." The middle-aged man suddenly kicked the young man to the ground, and then looked at the people around him. "What are you looking at? Look again and I'll dig your eyeballs out." Seeing this, the people around didn't dare to say anything more. This person was obviously not to be trifled with. If they said anything more, this crazy person might kick them. Didn't they see that the young man was still clutching his stomach and lying on the ground, unable to get up? Ignoring the young man who was kicked to the ground, the middle-aged man continued to walk with the phone in his hand, and made a call as he cursed. A young man carrying a backpack brushed past the middle-aged man. He was similar to the other passers-by, and there was nothing special about him. After passing by the middle-aged man, the young man with the backpack seemed to feel cold. He blew on his hand, and then put it into his pocket. Then there was a commotion not far behind him. The middle-aged man who kicked and cursed with the phone just now fell to the ground. The people around tried to call him, but he didn't respond. After a while, there was a woman's terrified scream, and the passers-by shouted to call the police. The young man with the backpack turned a corner and walked into an alley. When he reached the other end of the alley, he saw the big tabby cat licking its paws. Next to the big tabby cat was the remains of a mouse. Noticing that someone was approaching, the big tabby cat looked up alertly. Seeing that it was an acquaintance, the big tabby cat returned to its usual intimate state. It meowed a few times, and even took the initiative to rub against the young man's trousers. Cats could always switch between being cute and being a killer. The young man bent down and picked up the big tabby cat. Using the dim light on the side, he took out a tissue from his pocket and wiped the big tabby cat's mouth. He didn't mind that the cat was dirty, and carried the cat to the door of the restaurant. Just as he was about to go in, he saw Zheng Tan squatting in the car seat. He was stunned, obviously not expecting to meet him at this time. After the surprise, the young man smiled and waved at Zheng Tan. Then he walked into the restaurant, sat in the empty seat by the door, ordered some food, and played with the big tabby cat again. "Black charcoal. Sorry I'm late." Xiong came out of a taxi with a smile on his face. He was afraid that others didn't know that he had good news. Zheng Tan didn't move, and only looked at him quietly. "Okay, you've worked hard. Let's go. I'll take you to Jiao Wei's restaurant for hot soup. I'll take care of whatever you want to eat." Xiong said generously. "That's more like it." Zheng Tan jumped out of the car seat, and was about to leave. As long as Xiong went with him to Jiao Wei's restaurant, It would explain why Zheng Tan was late for dinner. Jiao Wei's parents would also contact the Jiao family. This way, Zheng Tan wouldn't be scolded. Before leaving, Zheng Tan looked at the young man with the bag again. The young man just happened to look up and raised his hand with a smile and said bye-bye to Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan turned back and shook his beard. He felt that the young man was a bit strange, but other than knowing that the young man was very attached to cats, he couldn't see anything else. Chapter 417. The next day, when Zheng Tan was shopping outside, he heard that someone suddenly died on a street. It was said that the person fell down directly when he was talking on the phone. He didn't get up again. When the ambulance arrived, he was already dead. Zheng Tan didn't feel much when he heard the news. He just felt that the street was quite close to the place where he stayed yesterday. Other than that, he didn't think much about it. He still lived his life as usual. Zheng Tan went to the lakeside villa for a walk. Feng Baijin had graduated, but he decided to start a business in Chuhua City and set up a game development studio. Father Jiao's 2 children were rarely at home now, so the 70-square-meter house didn't feel crowded at all. Instead, it felt empty, so he didn't want to move there. At least, he wouldn't move there for the next 3 years. Feng Baijin was quite used to living there, so the rental contract was renewed. However, Zheng Tan rarely went there now. Huzi rarely came here now. In addition, the weather was getting colder and colder. That guy almost only stayed at home, and often occupied Feng Baijin's laptop keyboard. When Feng Baijin came out of the bathroom at work, he would see Huzi squatting on it. Later, Feng Baijin specially asked someone to make a keyboard-like heating pad to divert Huzi's attention. Unfortunately, within 2 days, Huzi continued to occupy the laptop keyboard and didn't care about the keyboard-like heating pad at all. Perhaps, it just wanted to find fault and find a sense of existence. It seemed that Huzi wasn't the only cat who liked to sleep on the keyboard. Zheng Tan saw many cats like this, such as Black Rice on the 3rd floor. Now, when Zheng Tan went down to the 3rd floor to visit, he often saw Black Rice occupying Air Mao's laptop keyboard. After wandering around for a while, and having lunch at Feng Baijin's place, Zheng Tan slowly wandered back to the house. Recently, Chuhua University was very lively. Most of the things Zheng Tan heard while walking were talking about the concert on Christmas Eve. Some places on campus also put up publicity boards. There were large posters on the boards, New Boy. Behind several band members, there was a huge black cat pattern in the background. That was New Boy's team emblem. New Boy, that is Ajin's band. Now that Ajin and the others were getting more and more famous, they had long left their initial immaturity. Their popularity had been rising over the past few years, especially among many students. This year, Chuhua University was the last stop of Ajin's campus tour. The time was set to be on the night of the 24th of this month. That day was the so-called Christmas Eve, but it was also Friday. The time was just right. If you want to get tickets, you can either buy albums or other related products as a gift, or participate in some activities as a reward. Of course, there are many tickets in the school. At the ticket counter at several fixed points in the school, students lined up in long lines. They were not afraid of being blown by the cold wind. They stood there either chatting with the people in front and behind them, or playing with their phones. No matter how long the line was, they had to get a ticket. If they did not have a ticket, they could only find someone to buy a ticket on the school forum. However, that way the price would be very high. Many students could not afford it. Compared to those high-priced tickets that could be resold, they would rather be blown by the cold wind and endure it. In addition to the tickets, there were some New Boy accessories at the ticket counter. For example, the black cat team emblem was sold quite well. Anyway, it was not expensive. Most students would spend a few yuan to buy the team emblem after receiving the tickets. Even after the concert, it could be used as a good decoration. Of course, there were also people who did not care about this. When they saw the long line, they asked the people around them, "What's going on over there? Is it another famous person's lecture?" Sometimes, there would be some famous people in the school who would come to the school's lecture hall, such as some old actors, well-known hosts, successful entrepreneurs, influential professors at home and abroad, and so on. Every time there was such a situation, there would be a long line to get tickets. "You don't even know this? Of course it's New Boy." The person next to him said disdainfully. What's a new boy? The person asked again. The person next to him had a helpless expression on his face as he explained to his classmate. I heard that New Boy's lead singer, Ajin, once came to our school's guitar association's performance. I know that. I heard from a classmate of the guitar association. He said that Ajin performed on the same stage as their previous president. The opening double guitar performance was by the two of them. I still have the video. I've watched it several times. It's quite exciting. Someone joined the discussion. When did this happen? It should have been a few years ago, right? New Boy's lead singer actually did such a thing. That's nothing. Back then, New Boy was not as famous as it is now, but Ajin's ability was still very strong. Back then, he even played guitar with the previous president of the Guitar Association. Wow. There's such a thing. A student said in surprise. You're ignorant, aren't you? You don't pay attention to the Guitar Association, so you don't know how popular it is in our school. Now, if you want to join the association, you have to go through layers of screening. It's very strict. Otherwise, the association would definitely be full. The main reason for such a phenomenon is New Boy's band. Every year, the Guitar Association can get some tickets to New Boy's concerts. The seats are not bad. Every time he heard someone talk about Ajin's band, Jung Tan would think of those few young people who were almost forced into a desperate situation. In the blink of an eye, they had already reached such heights. Shaking his head, Jung Tan continued walking. Even if he wanted to watch the concert, he did not need to get a ticket. He was not worried about the ticket at all. In any case, he would not squeeze into the venue. He could just stay on the tree next to the sports field. As he walked, Jung Tan went out of the school's side gate and headed toward Henggu Plaza. He decided to go to Triumph's place to take an afternoon nap and grab some snacks to pass the time. Since the establishment of Henggu Plaza, the flow of people and cars had increased. As he walked, Jung Tan could hear some people urgently honking their horns. It was once said that the more utilitarian people were, the more they liked to honk their horns to express their dissatisfaction when they encountered difficulties. The traffic in the city was always a test of people's patience and morality, and the sound of the horns became a reference to judge the personality of the city. No matter which city it was, there would always be such impatient people who would loudly honk their horns no matter what. For Jung Tan, who had excellent hearing, this kind of horn sound was simply devastating. Therefore, when he heard the rapid and irritating sound of the horn, Jung Tan hurriedly covered his ears and ran quickly until the horn sound stopped, or when he was far away from the source of the sound. Only then did he slow down. Unlike Night Tower, Triumph's main customers were young people, and most of them were university students. New Boy's audience was also mostly university students. Recently, Triumph had been holding a promotion. If you spent a certain amount of money, you would get a free ticket to a campus concert as well as some trinkets, such as New Boy's team emblem, pendants, and so on. When Jung Tan came over, he saw someone rushing in and saying to the person next to him, "I hope there are still tickets." Every time Jung Tan came over, someone would definitely report to the higher-ups. After all, Jung Tan as a VIP customer was really too special. Jung Tan didn't pay attention to anything else. Because it was a spur-of-the-moment decision, he didn't bring his card and had someone swipe it to open the room. In any case, the person in charge here was already familiar with Jung Tan, so there was no need to doubt the authenticity of the cat. Because of this, Jung Tan didn't bring his card several times. It was too troublesome to bring a card alone, so sometimes he would wobble his way here. After Jung Tan ate some small nuts in his private room, he jumped onto the sofa and planned to sleep. He didn't expect that someone would come in just as he was about to close his eyes. The person who came wasn't a waiter, but one of Yi Hao's subordinates, Leopard. Behind Leopard was a man wearing a baseball cap. When he came in, the other person's head was slightly lowered. After closing the door, he raised his head. Jung Tan recognized this person. It was the hot topic of many people recently, Ajin. Wasn't there still a few days before the concert? Black Charcoal, long time no see. Ajin took off his cap. It was too easy to be recognized in Triumph. He hadn't been so careful when he went to the night building yesterday. Sure enough, there were a lot of young people coming to Triumph. Ajin's band arrived in Chuhua the day before yesterday. When they came here, they had to visit their former boss and go to the night building. Today, they came to triumph. Because there were a lot of people here at night, it was easy to be recognized, so Ajin disguised himself and came here in broad daylight. He didn't expect that when he was talking to Leopard, someone would report to Leopard that the black cat had come to take a nap again. Therefore, Ajin hurried over to see the black cat that had appeared at the turning point of his life. Ajin often thought, if he hadn't met the black cat outside the night building that year, what would have happened to him and his teammates? Now that the band was popular, many people had asked him why their band's emblem was a black cat. He had never betrayed Jungtan. This was Yi Hao's suggestion, and Ajin had kept it a secret. Ajin didn't stay with Jungtan for more than a few minutes before he received a call urging him to come over. There were still many things that he needed to deal with before the concert. After saying goodbye to Leopard and Jungtan, Ajin left with his baseball cap. Before leaving, Ajin gave Jungtan 4 tickets. He remembered that there were 4 people in Jungtan's family. Even if his family didn't go, he could give them to his friends. Jungtan didn't wear his vest today, so he couldn't bring the tickets back. He didn't want to hold them in his mouth, so it was Leopard who sent them to Tsinghua University directly to Jiaopa. Little Pomelo was going to attend a classmate's birthday party today, and wouldn't come back until tomorrow. Jiao Yuan wasn't here either. Jiaopa and Jiaoma weren't very interested in these things. They just stood in the distance and didn't want to squeeze in with the young people. Therefore, the tickets ended up in the hands of one of Jiaopa's graduate students. Jiaopa's graduate students almost knelt down. They didn't expect their boss to be able to get these tickets. At first glance, they knew that the tickets weren't the kind that could be obtained by the school. These tickets were comparable to VIP seats. Many students were jealous of the treatment that Professor Jiao's students received, and they kept complaining. However, when asked about the source of the tickets, Jiaopa just smiled and didn't say anything. What else could he do? Say that it was because of his cat? Who would believe that? On the night of the 24th, warning lines were set up around Tsinghua University's main sports field, and other cars took a detour. As night fell, the atmosphere around the main sports field was unusually lively. In the past, many people would go out on Christmas Eve, so there were very few people on campus. However, today wasn't the case. Tsinghua University's main sports field seemed to have attracted all the people from the surrounding areas. The streets near the school gate, and even the Henggu Plaza, were much quieter. Many people who didn't manage to get tickets were wandering around the edges. Even if they couldn't get in, it was good to be able to listen in. There weren't any tall buildings around the main sports field. Even if there were, the doors would be sealed and no one would be allowed to enter. They were afraid that students would get into accidents on the rooftops. Whenever this happened, the relevant departments of the student union would be able to get in. They didn't need tickets. They could just show their identification and enter. It was easier to get things done when there were people in the government. Jungtan stood on a tree at the edge of the sports field and looked at the area occupied by the students. The people at the back couldn't see the faces of the people on the stage clearly. Therefore, many students were holding binoculars in their hands. Before the concert started, Ajin went on stage to tune. Before he started singing, the fans below the stage started shouting. The girls who were usually reserved were no longer reserved. They shouted at the top of their lungs and jumped up and down. Jungtan was so scared that his beard trembled. With the opening of a fast-paced song that the students were familiar with, the atmosphere exploded again. The temperature on a winter night was lower, but the atmosphere was very lively. The temperature seemed to have risen by several degrees. The students used digital cameras, binoculars, light sticks, and other tools in their hands. They waved their light sticks nonstop. After the concert started, the fans waved their light sticks and color boards under the night sky. They waved them very professionally. Following the rhythm, the lights of various colors swayed together. It didn't look messy at all. Some people said that if you liked an idol, you must go to his concert. Because through a screen, you couldn't feel the heat radiating from the stage that made your blood boil. The life on the stage was so dazzling. For the fans below the stage, at this moment, in the small world of the fans, the people on the stage were their irreplaceable everything. Ajin and the others also interacted with the students below the stage. Several people from the school's guitar association, including the current president, were lucky enough to go on stage. After playing a song together, during the break, the people from the Guitar Association shared some stories about Ajin and the school's guitar association with everyone. This was also with Ajin's permission. The students back then had already graduated. Now many people didn't know that the famous Cat's Fantasy was actually composed in the old tile-roofed house of the school. This caused a burst of discussion below the stage. Some people screamed, and some people asked loudly. However, it was too far away for them to hear clearly. After a short break, Ajin played the song Cat's Fantasy. After hearing the story behind it and listening to Cat's Fantasy, the fans below the stage felt different from before. It seemed that every time they listened to Cat's Fantasy, there would be a different feeling. Ajin was playing the guitar when someone below the stage suddenly shouted, "Look, there's a cat! Don't be noisy. It's a concert. Listen to the music. Don't be noisy. Pay attention to your manners." Someone scolded in a low voice. "No, there's a cat." Many people saw it. They opened their eyes wide and pointed to the stage with their chins open. Zheng Tan, who was squatting on the tree, saw the situation on the stage and almost slipped down from the tree. Chapter 418. Generally, this kind of campus concert was well guarded. The security was tight. Even the heads of the student union had to show their identification a few times when they went in, let alone those undocumented people. But no one expected a cat to suddenly appear. Cats were sometimes hard to guard against. If they were not careful, they would jump out and make their presence known. In such a big scene, with so many people, the deafening sound effects and the shouting crowd, generally speaking, animals would stay far away. Unfortunately, the sheriff was a special case. Of course, it could also be because the venue was much quieter just now, and Ajin's performance of Cat's Fantasy had attracted the cat. Because of the sheriff's sudden appearance, the other members of the band on the stage were surprised. They really did not plan for this. They had rehearsed all the segments several times, because it was the last stop of the campus concert tour. And because of Ajin's relationship with Tsinghua University, everyone paid special attention to it. But the sudden appearance of a cat was completely unexpected, especially when it appeared when Ajin was playing Cat's Fantasy. Even Ajin, who was playing, could not help but pause when he saw the cat jump on the stage. But when he saw the cat jump on the stage, he raised his hand to stop the staff who was about to come over and take the cat away and continued playing. Many people in the audience guessed that it was specially arranged by New Boy. Although some of them had seen the sheriff before, there were so many cats in the country that no one could be sure. They could only continue to watch with strong curiosity. Most of the eyes that were originally on Ajin were now on the cat on the stage. Sometimes, the sheriff was really bold. Zheng Tan had experienced this before. Unlike Depeng's obedience and Huang's caution and timidity, the sheriff could always show everyone something special about him. After jumping on the stage, the sheriff looked around. Then he raised his head and walked towards Ajin, who was still playing. He walked to Ajin's feet and wagged his tail slowly. He was probably thinking about something. Ajin was originally standing. After the sheriff came over, Ajin directly sat on the ground and played with his legs crossed. Many people in the audience had already raised their digital cameras to shoot. No matter what they guessed in their hearts, the sheriff's appearance was indeed like an Easter egg that jumped out at the transitional stage of the concert. Some people exclaimed in a low voice, "Look here! Look over here!" Others advised the people nearby not to make any noise. What if they scared it away? Fortunately, the sheriff was brave. He only glanced at the audience a few times and ignored them. Then he squatted by the side and stared at the guitar and Ajin's hands that were plucking the metal strings. His head was slightly tilted. Zheng Tan looked at the wagging tail and knew that the sheriff had found something interesting again. Sure enough, within a few seconds, the sheriff raised a claw and hooked it on the guitar strings. Thus, a sound that did not match the original tune appeared. However, Ajin did not stop and continued to play. After the sheriff tried it once, he felt that it was quite fun. He had played it before, but now he suddenly found the feeling again. Therefore, he raised the claws that he had just put down to cause trouble again. Fortunately, with Ajin around, These abrupt tones didn't sound bad. Instead, they added a sense of wonder to the music. Most of the halos on the stage were drawn to the sheriff. One of the band members couldn't help but cover his face and laugh. They were not worried that the concert would be ruined, nor were they worried that the cat would steal the limelight. Perhaps the appearance of the cat could help them make a lot of headlines. When Ajin finally finished playing the song, he did not get up immediately. He even handed the guitar to the sheriff. The sheriff looked at Ajin, and then looked at the guitar in front of him. He hooked his tail, then raised his two front paws and began to pluck Ajin's guitar. At first, he was testing it and plucked it slowly. Then he probably got addicted to playing and plucked it faster and faster. Zheng Tan wanted to cover his face. The sheriff ignored the noise made by the people on the stage. It was really embarrassing. Was this the art of the cat? It was too strange. However, the students below the stage did not dislike it. Instead, many people applauded and thought that the cat was really interesting. Some people even shouted loudly to cheer it on. Fortunately, the sheriff did not intend to continue playing. After plucking for about 10 seconds, he withdrew his claws. Hearing the discussion below the stage begin again, Ajin raised his hand and pressed down in the air. The audience quieted down. Many people have asked about our team emblem. Why is it that we have a dog but the team emblem is a cat? I also once said that a black cat helped us a lot to be able to get to where we are today. We are very grateful to it. We will always use this team emblem. It will also testify that we New Boy are walking towards glory step by step, Ajin said. The people below the stage did not say anything. They waved the light sticks and color boards in their hands, and held up the DV and cameras in their hands. They were also looking forward to Ajin continuing to talk about the mysterious black cat and reveal more information. However, Ajin did not continue on this topic. Instead, he said, "The song I composed back then, Cat's Fantasy, I also told everyone that it was because of a cat. When I came to Tsinghua University, I wondered if I would meet the cat from back then." Some of the students below the stage had already guessed what Ajin was going to say next. They covered their mouths and began to get excited. Sure enough, Ajin continued. "Now I finally see it again. Moreover, I can perform on the same stage as it." Ah! Some of the students below the stage finally shouted excitedly. Was it this cat? Was it this cat that led Ajin to compose the divine song, Cat's Fantasy? They suddenly felt so honored. Coming to a live concert on Christmas Eve was indeed a worthwhile trip. This was the cat of Tsinghua University. A cat full of artistic talent. Good job, Ajin. Continue to gossip. Continue to talk about things that no one knows. However, the excited reaction of the audience below the stage scared the sheriff. He arched his back and jumped back a few steps, as if he would run away if everyone called him that again. Ajin put a finger to his mouth and made a shoe gesture to the audience below the stage. The audience suddenly became much quieter. "Everyone, don't scare him away," Ajin said with a smile. Ajin handed the guitar to his teammates, then turned sideways and picked up the sheriff. The sheriff did not resist. It was probably because he had cooperated with Ajin just now. He felt that the person in front of him was not bad, and was not dangerous. He was very obedient. "Thank you very much for the inspiration you gave me, and thank you very much for coming today," Ajin said to the sheriff and raised his hand to touch the sheriff's cat head. In the beginning, Cat's Fantasy did make Ajin famous, and New Boy also made their presence known. If he expected correctly, after tonight's event, New Boy would make their presence known in the entertainment circle again, which was a good thing for New Boy. He should thank the cat, whether it was the black one or the black and white one. After Ajin finished speaking, the sheriff meowed. It seemed to be a response to Ajin's words, and the sound was clearly transmitted to the ears of everyone present through the sound equipment. Some of the people below the stage began to interpret the sentence in their minds, and many students laughed kindly. New Boy's people, including Ajin, did not expect the sheriff to respond so cooperatively. They thought that the cat was really amazing. However, only Zheng Tan, who knew the sheriff very well, knew that it was because Ajin's way of holding the cat was wrong. The sheriff felt uncomfortable, so he snorted to express his dissatisfaction. Who knew that the timing of the snort was so coincidental that it was misunderstood by everyone? At this moment, someone in the school took a dog out for a walk and wandered nearby. The dog heard the sheriff's cry amplified by the sound equipment on the stage, and immediately roared at the top of its voice. It recognized the voice of the cat that always made things difficult for it, so it roared fiercely and loudly. At this time, there were no shocking sound effects to cover it up. At this moment, the venue was relatively quiet, and some people present heard the dog barking. The sheriff, who was still in Ah-Jin's arms, pricked up his ears and began to bark in the direction of the sound. Woof 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 woof. New boy, the staff, the students below the stage. Zhengtan. F***ck, the sheriff is showing off his foreign language skills again. The others roared in their hearts at the same time. F***ck. Alpacas galloped throughout the venue. Many people couldn't hold it in and shouted directly. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, many people would have thought that it must have been arranged by New Boy, such as a falsetto or something. But obviously it was true. There was another burst of discussion. Someone recognized the sheriff. And then there were screams and whistles that swept through the venue. However, the reaction of the students below the stage obviously frightened the sheriff. He broke free from Ah-Jin's hand, jumped off the stage and disappeared. Even if someone wanted to stop him, they couldn't stop him. The cat's movements were too agile and fast, and it was night now. The sheriff's fur was also a lot black, so it was difficult to find him. However, as the saying goes, a monk can run away, but the temple can't run away, and the cat can't run away from the nest. Since it was confirmed that it was the sheriff, some people who knew the sheriff wanted to ask the sheriff to take a few more photos and then post them on the internet to show off. Look, this is the cat that played the duet with New Boy. After the sheriff left, the concert continued, but everyone was thinking about the cat just now. After the concert ended, everyone left. The autograph thing had been done during the day, so now that it was over, everyone left. New Boy's people also didn't stay for long. Tsinghua University's school forum exploded. Most of them were talking about the Easter egg tonight, and the sheriff's identity was also dug out by everyone. After it was revealed by insiders, some people who didn't pay much attention to cats and didn't understand the faculty's family compound realized that the sheriff's weirdness was far more than that. The fact that the cat could bark was also true. Many people were clamoring that they must go and have a closer look at this legendary cat the next day, while others seized the time to post what they had seen and heard tonight on the internet. Those who took videos also uploaded them to video websites to share. Although the video was taken from a distance and was not very clear, only a shadow could be seen. Netizens could also hear the sound inside, and knew what had happened on this unusual night. The next day, many entertainment news headlines reported what happened last night. Even though New Boy was much worse than other popular movie stars, this incident was enough to attract people's attention. Unexpected Easter egg. Magical cat. New Boy's lead singer and cat have to say something. Who was Cat's fantasy for? Another protagonist of yesterday's Christmas Eve concert made a dazzling appearance. It had to be said that because of the sheriff's unexpected appearance, New Boy's existence was strongly emphasized. Some people who didn't like New Boy also paid attention to New Boy because of this incident. New Boy's company also seized the opportunity to promote a positive image. This morning, Old Man Lon found that many students came into the compound, and there were also students who were stopped outside the gate. He didn't go over to ask what was going on. If he had time to gossip, it was better to look at the flowers. But when Old Man Lon walked to the small flower garden, he found that there were more students at the gate of his small flower garden. If the small flower garden hadn't been remodeled, it was estimated that some people would have climbed over the wall to enter. The dog in the small flower garden, because it sensed that there were many strangers walking around outside, kept barking. The students with sharp ears found that there were indeed 3 kinds of barking, which confirmed the news on the forum yesterday. In the following days, there were always some people wandering around the small flower garden, and many of them were from other schools. They couldn't enter the family compound, but they could stay here. Many people who came to Tsinghua University to play with their classmates came to try their luck and see the magical cat of Tsinghua University. Chapter 419. The sheriff's incident was a hot topic. Jiao Yuan even called to ask about it. Fortunately, it was the end of the year, and the students were busy preparing for the final exams, buying souvenirs, and getting tickets to go home. Therefore, there were fewer people who went to stop the sheriff. However, the sheriff was not as free on campus now. Every time he came out, someone would chase after him. Whenever the students chased after him, the sheriff would run away. Therefore, when Jung Tan strolled around the campus, she rarely saw the sheriff so carefree on the road. He could only hide in the courtyard to play with a Huang or interact with the two dogs in the small garden. This was the disadvantage of being famous. You didn't get any benefits, but you got into a lot of trouble. Seeing what happened to the sheriff, Jung Tan was very glad that he had been keeping a low profile. Ajin also didn't tell anyone about him. After Christmas and New Year's Day, the Jiao family counted the days and waited for Jiao Yuan to come back. This was the first time that Jiao Yuan had been away from home for so long. It had been half a year, and finally he could come back. Jiao Yuan called the Jiao family and told them that he would be a little late. He was working in his supervisor's laboratory. Now the laboratory was busy with a project, and no one left the research group. Jiao Yuan couldn't just leave by himself. Even though he was only a freshman, if he really left, the other students in the research group would definitely have thoughts about it. Father Jiao could understand this. His students were like this. Now that the undergraduate students had left one by one, some of the graduate students had not finished their work yet, so they wanted more people to help. In fact, this could also deepen the relationship between Jiao Yuan and his seniors. This could also be used as a networking tool in the future. At the same time, the supervisors would have a better impression of Jiao Yuan. In the future, no matter if he wanted to go abroad or take the postgraduate entrance exam, the supervisors would definitely help him. Jiao Ma understood, but she still felt uncomfortable. She continued to look forward to the future. On the 26th day of the 12th lunar month, Chuhua University was deserted. Jiao Yuan came back, and Jiao Pa drove to the bus station to pick him up. After being away from home for half a year, Jiao Yuan had changed a lot. In the past, he could only be considered a student. He had the pureness of a student and the frivolity of youth. But now he seemed much more mature. Being away from his parents could indeed speed up a person's growth. What made Jung Tan very unhappy was that everyone liked to talk about him when they came back. The protest was futile. Although they came back late, it was also a good thing to have a reunion. Jiao Yuan said that some of the senior brothers and sisters in the laboratory had to stay in Beijing for the new year. The experiment was at a critical stage, so they couldn't leave and couldn't go home. They spent all their time in the laboratory. Some of the popular research topics were also researched by many people in other countries. If you were one step behind, the results would be meaningless in the eyes of others. Who cared how much time, money, and energy you spent, and how many sacrifices you made? It was very difficult. Jung Tan had heard of such things happening many times in this field. After the new year, everyone came back. Jiao Yuan and his friends got together again and arranged a time to take Jung Tan to Triumph to swipe his cat card. The 4 people from the courtyard, plus Fu Lei, chatted and drank at Triumph for the whole night. Jung Tan listened to them talk about their bitter university life. Among the 5 of them, Xiong was probably the most leisurely one. Jiao Yuan, Suan, and Lan Tianju were all very busy. Outside of class time, they had to stay in the laboratory. It was not good for them to sneak out because their mentors knew their fathers, and they often contacted each other. If they did not perform well and were caught sneaking out, not only would they suffer, but their fathers would also lose face. Others thought that they had connections, and that they didn't have to worry about anything. But they didn't know that they were also under a lot of pressure. When others were having fun, they had to go to the laboratory to help. When others were flirting with girls, they didn't have anything to say to each other. When others went home, they had to stay in the laboratory to help their seniors. Who was luckier than who, and who was more miserable than who? As for Fu Lei, he was working part-time. His family wasn't well off, so he spent a lot of money to support his high school education. Now, it was difficult for him to support his university education. He didn't have many classes, so he boldly skipped some classes and went out to look for part-time jobs or internships to reduce his financial burden. He could also find a place to settle down quickly after graduation. His father didn't have the ability to use his connections, so he could only rely on himself. Zheng Tan sighed as he listened. Why didn't he feel anything when he was in university? Now, he felt that these 5 people were suddenly starting to mature quickly. I suddenly feel that I was so awesome in high school. I knew everything from astronomy to geography. After half a year in university, I forgot a lot of things. When I graduate, I'll probably forget all the non-professional knowledge. Fu Lei, who worked part-time as a tutor during his freshman year, said emotionally. Jiao Yuan said, "That's right. I often meet people who ask me, you're a university student in a famous school, but you don't know anything about middle school and high school?" But now, I only know a lot about the professional stuff. My impression of the non-professional stuff has faded. The other 3 people also nodded in agreement. Actually, most of them are like that. There's nothing strange about it. Suan said. Xiong Xiong laughed. A cat once said, "The more you learn, the more you know. The more you know, the more you forget. The more you forget, the less you know." Why did you learn this? Ha! Hey, Xiong Xiong. Do you remember a teacher in middle school who made comments at the end of your Chinese test paper? Lan Tianju asked with a smile. Xiong Xiong's face became serious. He imitated the expression of their middle school Chinese teacher, and said seriously, "Thou art ungrateful." I met that teacher a few days ago when I went to the market to help my mom carry the basket. He looked a lot older. Let's go visit those middle school teachers when we have time tomorrow. They don't live far from here anyway. Jiao Yuan suggested. Okay, let's go with the high school teachers. We can only come back once or twice a year. The Chinese New Year passed smoothly. Jiao Yuan, Suan, and Lan Tianju did not spend the entire Chinese New Year at home. They left one after another after the 11th. Jiao Ma cried at home for a few days. Not only Jiao Ma, but Suan and Lan Tianju's families were also like that. Suan's mother even ran over to Jiao Ma and cried with her. Before he came back, I was looking forward to it. After a few days, I felt that it was noisy again. I even told him to hurry up and go back to school. But now that he's gone, my heart. Before they could finish their words, the 2 mothers had already cried. Zheng Tan hid outside the door and did not dare to go in. He was afraid that he would be pulled to ease the atmosphere. Forget it. Looking at the path Jiao Yuan and the others had chosen, they would probably have to continue their studies or go abroad. After all, in many fields, foreign countries were indeed more authoritative. There were many things in China that were not recognized internationally. So the chances of them returning to Tsinghua University were very small. Thinking about it this way, in the next few years, would this kind of thing happen every year when the children left home and the mothers gathered together to cry? Maybe it will be better after they get used to it. Of course, the development of technology made it much more convenient for people in 2 places to contact each other. Every week, Mother Jiao would video call Jiao Yuan or call him. From time to time, she would send a text message or something. This was much better than the old days when there were no telephones, and they could only hope for slow letters. When school started again, Jiao Ma and the rest were busy. They did not have much time to be sad. Zheng Tan strolled over to the outer wall of the university. He took a pencil and wrote February 28, 2011 on the wall. Zheng Tan felt that the message this time was too monotonous. He looked up at the sun in the sky. Zheng Tan drew a circle behind the date and added a few hairs outside the circle. At noon, Zheng Tan had lunch in Jiao Pa's office. Xian came here every day to eat with him. Jiao Pa was now in charge of a big research project. Xian also participated in it. Sometimes, the 2 of them would discuss the progress of the project for a long time. Then they would assign the task to the graduate students. Hey, Professor Jiao, when do you think I can make a name for myself? Xian was much more casual when she was with Professor Jiao in private. Jiao Pa looked up at Xian and said, when they don't call you senior brother anymore. Because Xian was very friendly and young, only a few years older than most of the graduate students, many people in the university now followed Jiao Pa's graduate students and called Xian senior brother instead of Professor However, Jiao Pa's words made sense. When Xian really made a name for herself, even if she looked friendly, no students would dare to call her senior brother so casually. Talking about the several white mice in the laboratory recently, Exian thought of the red-haired mouse that was under strict care. Relying on this red mouse, several high-impact articles were published in the university. Until now, it was still treated as a treasure by the experts in the Academy of Biological Sciences. The food was carefully prepared. If it couldn't finish it, it would be thrown away on the same day. They were very careful when taking blood samples. The experts in the university didn't dare to let the young students do it. They were afraid that they would use a little more force to break the neck of the red-haired mouse. Otherwise, the teachers in the university would definitely cry and faint in the toilet of the Academy of Biological Sciences. Fortunately, the red-haired mouse was still very strong. Although it was not as energetic as when it was first sent here, its vitality was still much stronger than other mice. According to this red-haired mouse would have no problem living for another 3 to 5 years. In many people's eyes, this was a miracle. Now the red-haired mouse's temper was a little kinder. But the people in charge of sampling and feeding it were still cautious. Otherwise, it would not be a small matter if it was bitten. The university wanted to use this red-haired mouse to breed more red offspring. Unfortunately, they had not succeeded. Either the white mice sent in were bitten to death, or the offspring born did not have red offspring, and had all kinds of congenital diseases. Some people had tried to clone it, but unfortunately, they still did not succeed. In addition, if they really pushed it too hard, the red-haired rat would even go on a hunger strike. This scared the big shots who usually put on airs in front of the provincial leaders, and they quickly stopped. Usually, when this little fellow was having trouble defecating, or when it was in an abnormal state, the big shots would hold a meeting to discuss the solution. After all, this red-haired rat was not young in many people's eyes. What if they accidentally lost it? While talking, Exian looked at the black cat that was narrowing its eyes and dozing off next to her. She thought to herself, after so many years, this cat is not young anymore. Zheng Tan did not notice Exian's expression. After eating and taking a nap, he left through the window. In the afternoon, he still had to go to the affiliated primary school to pick up Zhua Kitten. Today, Xiaozhua was going to have a meeting. She planned to ask Lord Zheng's students in the university to help her. Unexpectedly, Zhua Kitten refused. Instead, she called the Jiao family and asked Zheng Tan to pick her up. Anyway, Zheng Tan had nothing to do. He used to pick up little Pomelo like this, so he went there. Today, the affiliated primary school ended early. The next 2 classes were for interest groups. Zhua Kitten did not sign up. After class, she came out with her school bag. Seeing Zheng Tan squatting on the wall at the school gate, Zhua Kitten's eyes lit up. She called out Brother Black and ran over. The pencil box in her school bag was shaking. Zhua Kitten was now in the 2nd semester of the 2nd grade. In fact, with her knowledge and ability, it was a waste of her talent to go to the 2nd grade. However, Xiaozhua did not plan to let Zhua Kitten go to the junior class. She hoped that Zhua Kitten could learn and communicate with children of the same age and integrate into this generation. In the class, Zhua Kitten did not look at the textbook most of the time. She read her own books, and the teachers did not say anything. This was because Zhua Kitten had read a lot of books and asked a lot of questions that the primary school teachers could not answer at all. In addition, Lord Zheng and little Zhua had told the teachers before, so the substitute teachers did not restrain Zhua Kitten. After seeing Zheng Tan, Zhua Kitten took out 10 yuan from her pocket and waved it at Zheng Tan. Brother Black, I'll treat you to mutton skewers. Zheng Tan looked at Zhua Kitten. Was this child not planning to go home directly? However, Zhua Kitten seemed to have something on her mind today. Shaking his head, Zheng Tan hurried to follow her. The little guy's little kitten Zhua walked to the school gate and bought 2 skewers of mutton. Little Zhua had told him that the food outside was not clean and should not be eaten too much, so he bought some to satisfy his cravings. After buying it, she did not go back to the Western District courtyard directly. Instead, she went to a small road in the school and sat on a long wooden chair. She put 1 skewer to Zheng Tan's mouth and held the 2nd skewer with her other hand to eat. With Zhua Kitten helping to hold it, Zheng Tan only needed to move his mouth. As he ate, Zhua Kitten suddenly said, Brother Black, I think I'm going to have a father. Cough. Chapter 420. Although Zheng Tan knew that something was wrong with Zhua Kitten today, and that she had a lot on her mind at such a young age, he did not expect such a thing. Speaking of which, he had not paid attention to Zhua Kitten and little Zhua for a while. After all, Zhua Kitten was not like little Pomelo. Little Zhua would come to pick him up when he was free. Even if little Zhua could not come, little Zhua's former junior brothers and sisters would come to help. Now little Zhua was working as a teacher for the physics students. If Zhua Kitten did not go home after school, he would go to the physics department. Anyway, the people in the department already knew Zhua Kitten. After all, this little guy had Lord Zeng behind him. Even some teachers who did not smile would laugh when they saw Zhua Kitten. Although Zhua Kitten could not be considered to be walking sideways, he was almost there. In addition, Zhua Kitten was a little mischievous, scheming, and very smart. Because of this, Zheng Tan had never been worried about him. But now that he heard this, Zheng Tan did not know how to respond. Was this considered a happy event or a problem? Before Zhua Kitten was born, his biological father abandoned him and ran away. The identity of the father, in the household register, was fake. He was a martyr. It was a means of protection that little Zhua applied for. No matter what, Zhua Kitten did not have a father by his side since he was young. Even his mother left for several years before coming back. Zheng Tan was worried that he would be sad about this like other children. In fact, this kid had always had a good attitude. Zheng Tan thought that he did not care about this. But now, it seemed that it was impossible not to care. According to what Zhua Kitten just said, could it be that little Zhua had finally found a partner? In the past, Lord Zeng had introduced many people to him, but unfortunately, it did not work out. Now, did this mean that there was progress? Zheng Tan looked at Zhua Kitten. The child looked up at the sky after eating the mutton skewers. After saying that sentence, Zhua Kitten looked at the 2 bamboo skewers in his hands. He jumped off the chair and walked to the trash can not far away to throw them away. He came back and continued to sit. He had no intention of leaving. Zheng Tan could not speak. It was impossible to communicate with him. Should he secretly go and see what kind of person that person was? Brother He. Zhua Xiaomao looked at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan looked at him and tilted his head, indicating that he was listening. He continued. Let me tell you. Zheng Tan. Zhua Kitten talked for an hour. That person's name was Yu Cheng. He was a new teacher in the physics department this year, and he was also a professor. Little Zhua did not formally introduce him to Zhua Xiaomao, but Zhua Xiaomao had seen him a few times in the physics department. Moreover, when little Zhua was not around, little Zhua's junior brothers and sisters joked to Zhua Xiaomao that Yu Cheng might become Zhua Xiaomao's father. After Zhua Xiaomao observed him, she felt that it was indeed very possible. Lord Zeng also thought highly of them. The people who were close to little Zhua in the physics school even joked about the Zhua-Yu combination. It sounded like a good match. Anyone would have their own thoughts about this matter, let alone little kitten Zhua, who was more sensible than her peers. As for this stranger who might become her family, she did not reject him, but she did not accept him. Suddenly, such a person joined them. She was quite reluctant. She felt uneasy about the rhythm of her life being changed. Zheng Tan had never seen Yu Cheng before. However, since Lord Zeng supported him, his character should be good. He just did not know what Yu Cheng thought of Zhua Xiaomao. Little Zhua did not say anything until now. He was probably worried about Zhua Xiaomao's feelings. After talking about her little thoughts, Zhua Xiaomao's mood improved a lot. The phone in her bag rang. It was little Zhua. Little Zhua called the guard at the Western District courtyard. When he found that Zhua Xiaomao was not home yet, he called directly. I treated Brother He to mutton skewers. I'll go back later. Okay. Goodbye, Mom. After talking to Zhua Xiaomao in an obedient tone, before she put the phone in her bag, Zhua Xiaomao changed her expression and said to Zheng Tan, Brother He, I heard that person's voice again. He's next to Mom. Brother He, do I really have to have a father? It was useless to be conflicted like this. He could only take one step at a time. Zheng Tan could only help to see what kind of person the other party was. If it was a hypocrite who said one thing to his face but another behind his back, Zheng Tan would definitely intervene. If the other party was a good person, Zheng Tan did not intend to get involved. After sending Zhua Xiaomao to the door, Zheng Tan came out. He did not go home immediately. It was not 6 o'clock yet. He planned to go to the School of Physics to take a look. There were some people in the School of Physics who knew Zheng Tan, especially the graduate students who had been taught by Lord Zeng. They were more familiar with Zheng Tan. When they saw Zheng Tan, they even called out. Zheng Tan ignored them and jumped to a tree in front of the School of Physics and squatted. When little Zhuo called Zhuo Xiaomao just now, she was still in the courtyard and said that she would be home in half an hour. It had not been half an hour since the call. Zheng Tan waited here. He would see her eventually. Sure enough, not long after, Zheng Tan saw little Zhuo come out. Beside little Zhuo was not a few young female teachers or students who were usually with her, but a man who looked to be in his early 40s. He was not tall, only a little more than 1.7 meters. He was not much taller than little Zhuo. He was not very good-looking and not too ugly. He was just passable and relatively ordinary. However, his whole person looked a little sick. It was not very obvious, but it could still be seen. Such a person. How did little Zhuo like him? How did Lord Zeng agree? Zheng Tan thought about Zhuo Xiaomao's biological father and shook his head. He could not remember. But no matter what, this man was too ordinary, right? Could it be his charisma? The title of professor, in addition to such honors, should be able to add a lot of halo. He watched the two people walk to the parking lot of the School of Physics. After a while, little Zhuo rode out on an electric scooter. The man also rode an electric scooter. Zheng Tan stared. Damn, they didn't even have a four-wheeled car. Zheng Tan went to the parking lot of the School of Physics to take a look. There were many cars that were worth hundreds of thousands or even millions, especially those who had the title of professor and were in their 40s or 50s. Basically, everyone had a car. Even if it was not a luxury car, an economical four-wheeled sedan should be a basic configuration, right? The two of them did not ride fast. Zheng Tan followed behind them. They only separated when they reached a fork in the road. One went back to the western courtyard, and the other went to the main gate. Zheng Tan squatted in the grass and thought about little Zhuo's expression just now. It seemed that little Zhuo was quite satisfied with what he heard. His smile was not a perfunctory one, but a little shy. In the next few days, Zheng Tan went to the School of Physics every day and heard a lot of gossip about little Zhuo and Yu Cheng. In the school, not only the students, but also the teachers were very gossipy. Sometimes he could see two people in their 50s holding teacups and chatting by the grass in front of the school gate. As they talked, they would talk about little Zhuo. After hearing so much gossip, Zheng Tan found out that Yu Cheng was actually only 35 or 36 years old. He was married once, but they divorced very early. The reason was that he was always busy with experiments and did not have time to accompany his wife. He did not have any children and did not date again after the divorce. His health was not very good, and he had just gone through a period of recuperation. He used to work at the National Academy of Sciences. Later, he went abroad and met little Zhuo. The two of them met and returned a year later than little Zhuo. Now Yu Cheng came to Tsinghua University for little Zhuo. I heard that the two of them have been colleagues in the past few years abroad, someone said. Really? No wonder they seem to be very familiar with each other. It doesn't look like they just met. Another person was surprised. Zheng Tan was thinking on the tree next to him. When did little Zhuo go abroad for a few years? Thinking about it, Zheng Tan was suddenly startled. After little Zhuo joined the project and left for a few years, the excuse that Lord Zeng gave him was to go abroad for research. Could it be that Yu Cheng was also one of the members of that project? Thinking about it this way, it could explain why Yu Cheng looked like he was in his 40s even though he was only in his 30s. Moreover, he looked a little sick. When little Zhuo came back, he was like this. If this was the reason, Zheng Tan felt that Yu Cheng was actually not bad. To be able to be selected by the country to participate in such a project, he was definitely an elite among the elites. Zheng Tan observed Yu Cheng for a few more days. He didn't find that Yu Cheng had done anything out of the ordinary. When the teachers and students in the physics department gossiped, they didn't mention any negative news about this person. Zheng Tan thought that it was better not to get involved in this matter. However, just as Zheng Tan was planning to not get involved in this matter, Zhuo Xiaomao called the Jiao family and invited Zheng Tan over for dinner the next day. The Jiao family often invited Zheng Tan over for dinner. The Jiao family was already used to it. Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma didn't have any other reaction to this. However, Zheng Tan thought that this meal must be related to Yu Cheng. The next day, when Zheng Tan went over, little Zhua, who was wearing an apron, came over to open the door. Black charcoal, come in quickly. Take whatever you want to eat. Xiaomao is on the balcony. Little Zhua hurried to the kitchen. The dishes were still in the pot. Because it was the weekend, Zhua Xiaomao didn't go to school. Little Zhua also temporarily put aside the matters in the courtyard. Yu Cheng was obviously the same. There were 2 balconies in the house. One was on the master bedroom side. From there, one could see the courtyard's large recreational area. The other balcony was very small. Usually, little Zhua only used it to dry clothes. She didn't come here much. There wasn't much scenery here. She could only see the opposite building. Zhua Xiaomao usually didn't come here. But now, Zhua Xiaomao and Yu Cheng were here. When Zheng Tan walked to the balcony, Zhua Xiaomao was wearing small gloves. With the help of Yu Cheng, she was busy setting up a mechanical frame. The height was higher than the railing. There were 2 grooves on the mechanical arm that extended out. When she saw Zheng Tan, Zhua Xiaomao waved her hand. Brother Black, come quickly. Yesterday, I read the language book of the 4th-year student next door. It said that 2 iron balls fell at the same time. I'm going to do an experiment. Zheng Tan wasn't interested. Why did she make such a lousy experiment so complicated? Although he wasn't interested, since Zhua Xiaomao said so, Zheng Tan didn't know what to do. He just squatted at the side and watched the 2 of them work. Below this side was a lawn. The mechanical frame extended out far enough that it wouldn't fall on the cement ground at the edge of the building. It also deviated from the balcony to prevent people downstairs from sticking their heads out and hitting it. After the frame was set up, the timer and a few other things Zheng Tan didn't know were set up. Yu Cheng looked around and saw that there was no one downstairs nearby. He nodded. Zhua Xiaomao pressed the remote control in her hand. The grooves on the mechanical arm opened, and the big and small iron balls fell out. The sound of the iron balls falling to the ground was heard. The first thing Zhua Xiaomao looked at was a timer. Then she took a pen and paper and started to write and draw. Yu Cheng also had a pen and paper handed over by Zhua Xiaomao. However, he didn't write too many formulas like Zhua Xiaomao. Instead, after a pause, he directly wrote a number, and then watched Zhua Xiaomao calculate. Your formula is wrong. Yu Cheng pointed at the formula Zhua Xiaomao wrote on the paper and said, "Ha!" Zhua Xiaomao's face was unconvinced. She looked like she was going to complain to her mother if he couldn't give her a reasonable explanation. Yu Cheng didn't care about Zhua Xiaomao's angry glare. He smiled and picked up the pen and paper in his hand. He said to Zhua Xiaomao, "You're reading an old book, right? Let me deduce it for you." Zheng Tan, what the hell are you guys talking about? I don't King understand. Didn't the 2 iron balls fall at the same time? What are you guys calculating now? Why are you talking about height and classical physics? Free fall, your sister. Mechanical movement, your sister. Formula deduction, your sister. Zheng Tan's beard trembled. It trembled again and again. In the end, he turned around and went into the house. His IQ was suppressed there, and his self-esteem was hurt. It was better to go and watch TV. When they went downstairs to pick up the things, Zhua Xiaomao called Zheng Tan along. Yu Cheng followed behind them. When they went downstairs, Zhua Xiaomao kept introducing Zheng Tan to Yu Cheng. Yu Cheng listened to her with a smile, and didn't show any impatience. Although there was grass below them, Zhua Kitten had thrown too many things down, and some of them still rolled far away. After much difficulty, she found everything. Zhua Xiaomao put them all into her little box. Among them, there were 2 special little magnetic balls that Yu Cheng had given her. Zhua Xiaomao had been eyeing them for a long time. Yu Cheng reached out to help Zhua Xiaomao carry the things. Zhua Xiaomao took a few steps with her short legs and hugged the box. No. Before Zhua Xiaomao could walk far, Yu Cheng quickly stepped forward and scooped her up. He even spun her in the air. Zhua Xiaomao, who was hugging the box tightly, screamed. Children also liked to scream. However, compared to older children and adults, when they screamed, it didn't necessarily mean that they were scared. Instead, it meant that they were excited and happy. Zheng Tan had never heard Zhuo Xiaomao scream like that before. This child was always more mature than her peers. Although she was young in class, she was more mature than the others when it came to matters. She didn't fit in and didn't seem like a child. And now, for the first time, Zheng Tan felt that this child was really just a little brat. And brother hey, brother hey. Hearing Zhuo Xiaomao scream, Zheng Tan, who was thinking about something, was about to look over when he realized that he was being scooped up. Yu Qing scooped up Zhuo Xiaomao with one hand and Zheng Tan with the other. Let's go and eat. The atmosphere during the meal was quite harmonious. Zhuo Xiaomao quickly became familiar with Yu Qing and didn't feel as conflicted as she did a few days ago. Zheng Tan was happy for this child in his heart. A week later, Yu Qing proposed to little Zhuo. In the box that he handed over when he proposed, there was a ring and a small gold badge. Every small gold badge proved that the owner of the badge had contributed to the country. At the same time, it also meant that they had some special privileges that others didn't have. They belonged to the category of people who were specially protected. Little Zhuo put the 2 gold badges together. With the protection of 2 gold badges, Zhuo Xiaomao had another protective umbrella. In the warm spring season, everything seemed to be starting to exude vitality. The bell for the end of class rang, and a group of children rushed out carrying their backpacks. Zheng Tan squatted on a tree and looked at the children running out. Zhuo Xiaomao was among them. Little Zhuo and Yu Qing didn't come to pick her up. A graduate student took Zhuo Xiaomao to the School of Physics. Zhuo Xiaomao was very excited. She was able to enter the laboratory to observe an experiment today. Along the way, she asked a lot of related questions, and the graduate student patiently explained. When she looked up at the flowers on the tree, Zhuo Xiaomao saw Zheng Tan squatting on a tree branch. The smile on her face widened. Brother hey, brother hey. Zhuo Xiaomao waved her hand. Zheng Tan hesitated for a moment, and jumped down from the tree to see what this child wanted to say. Unexpectedly, Zhuo Xiaomao opened her mouth and said, "Let me tell you." Chapter 421. Little Zhuo and Yu Cheng's wedding was held in May. Jiao Pa, Jiao Ma, and Zheng Tan went to the banquet together. Little Pomelo was not free, and Jiao Yuan was in Beijing. There were many school leaders who attended the wedding, led by Lord Zeng. It was also because of this wedding that many people knew that Little Zhuo and Yu Cheng had many school leaders behind them. Usually, they would not use their status to trouble Little Zhuo and Yu Cheng at school. For Little Zhuo and Yu Cheng, they were not like those young people who had a honeymoon. They had a lot of work to do and did not have much time to go on vacation. If they wanted to go on vacation, they had to finish the next stage of the project. Although they could not go on a long vacation, they still took Little Zhuo to the amusement park to play. When Zheng Tan was invited to Little Zhuo's house for dinner again, it was already summer vacation. Little Zhuo's cat went to the countryside to play and caught some prawns. When she brought them back to eat, she said that she wanted to share them with Zheng Tan. Under the hot sun, Zheng Tan ran from the eastern courtyard to the western courtyard. Under the watchful eyes of the guards, he swaggered into the courtyard. Now Yu Qing lived with Little Zhuo and Little Zhuo. It was not that Little Zhuo and Yu Qing did not have the money to buy a house outside. It was just that it was convenient to live here. Little Zhuo had long been used to it. Yu Qing bought a 4-wheeled car with good safety features. It must have cost a lot of money. Many people said that they didn't need a 4-wheeled car, but one day, you would realize that you did need a vehicle with a door, not a Route 11 or a 2-wheeled car, because you were no longer the only one in your life, especially a family with children. When Zheng Tan entered the door, Little Zhuo was busy in the kitchen. Yu Qing was not there. He went to the courtyard and helped Little Zhuo with some of the things, so that Little Zhuo had time to stay at home with the children. Because it was just summer vacation, Little Zhuo did not go to school. She was lying on the bed in her small room, reading a book. Zheng Tan wiped his feet on the carpet next to him, and jumped up to look at the book in Little Zhuo's hand. Actually, it wasn't really a book. It was a thick stack of printed papers that were bound together. There were undergraduate, master's, doctorates, and other teachers' articles that were published in scientific journals. Zheng Tan could not understand any of this, but he was very curious about the words that Zhuo Kitten had written with different colored highlighters. For example, statistically significant trends. These results will be presented in a series of reports, to a certain extent correct, and so on. Although he was taking notes, the things that were marked out didn't seem to be any advanced scientific knowledge. When Zhuo Xiaomao saw Zheng Tan, she was very happy that she finally had someone to talk to. Brother He, do you know the hidden meaning behind these words? Zhuo Kitten pointed at the words that had been marked on the printed paper, as if she was eager to share an interesting story with Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan shook his head and listened to Zhuo Kitten's next words. Zhuo Kitten pointed at the words on the paper, as if she was presenting a treasure, and said, "He told me that there are many language traps in the paper. I can't understand the meaning on the surface, so I marked out these words and combined them with the full text to see if there really is such a hidden meaning." The he in Zhuo Kitten's words was referring to Yu Cheng. Now that they had been together for more than 3 months, Zhuo Kitten and Yu Cheng were familiar with each other, but they still hadn't settled on how to address each other. She felt that calling him Uncle Yu was too distant, so she directly called him Dad. Zhuo Kitten felt that it was difficult to say, so she temporarily used he instead. However, Zheng Tan guessed that it wouldn't be long before Zhuo Kitten changed the way she called Yu Cheng Dad. The chances of Zhuo Kitten mentioning Yu Cheng were quite high. Look, Brother He. For example, this statistically significant trend means that this statistical data is actually meaningless. Another example is this: results will be presented in a series of reports, which actually means that if this experiment can receive more support, such as funding, we will continue to do it. And this statistical investigation shows, which actually means that based on the above results, we predict, actually means that, sorry, we are also just guessing. This hope that this research can encourage scholars in this field to conduct more in-depth research and discussion, which actually means that whoever wants to do it can do it. I'm not doing it anymore. Hei's expression was that of, "This is the first time that I've seen such a thing." Zhuo Kitten gave many examples in a row, and they were all commonly used words in papers. Jiaopa had actually said these words before. Just like the slang in the industry, the insiders knew the deeper meaning contained in these words, but the laymen were fooled. Zhuo Kitten seemed to be looking for trouble. She marked out all the words that had hidden meaning in these papers, and then she read them all by herself, as if she was looking at a collection of jokes. Zheng Tan was very helpless at the side. He really didn't know where the joke was. After laughing, Zhuo Kitten closed the folder and said to Zheng Tan, "Brother He, my mother said before that she wanted to raise a cat. Last month, she even took me to the pet center to take a look. Originally, she planned to adopt one from there. Didn't the public service advertisement you filmed also say that adoption is the replacement of purchase?" Zhuo Kitten's smile faded, and there was a hint of worry. Little Zhuo had thought about adopting a cat a long time ago. However, little Zhuo and Yuqing didn't have time at home now. They basically stayed at the Physics Institute during the day, and Zhuo Kitten also had to go to school. After school, she went to the Physics Institute more often than she went home directly. Moreover, Zhuo Kitten was just a little kid. She didn't even have time to take care of people, so how could she take care of a small animal? Having an additional pet in the house was also an additional responsibility. She couldn't be too perfunctory. After thinking about it, little Zhuo temporarily gave up the impulse to adopt a cat. Zhuo Kitten felt a little regretful about this. He still wanted to adopt a cat and a dog. He had thought about it last month, but after he came back and listened to little Zhuo and Yu Cheng's analysis, he realized that he really didn't have time to take care of a cat and a dog. It was also impossible to bring a cat and a dog to the Physics Institute. Lord Zeng would definitely reject them selflessly. "Sigh, it'll be fine if you grow up quickly." Zhuo Kitten sighed. "You won't think so when you grow up." Zheng Tan thought to himself. When they were young, they all hoped to grow up quickly, but when they grew up, they fantasized about returning to the time when they were little kids. After having a sumptuous lunch at Zhuo Kitten's house, little Zhuo took the lunchbox to the Physics Institute. Zhuo Kitten watched TV for a while, and then took a nap. Zheng Tan stayed with her for a while. When little Zhuo came back, Zheng Tan left. He still had things to do in the afternoon, so he wouldn't stay here for too long. Coming out of the building, a wave of heat greeted him. Zheng Tan walked quickly to the shade of the trees and walked out along the shade. 2 cats were lying on their sides under the grape trellis and taking a nap. A big yellow and white cat sharpened its claws and climbed up the trunk. Halfway up, it saw Zheng Tan and stopped on the trunk like a cicada shedding its skin. It looked at Zhengtan until Zhengtan left. Then it swung its tail and continued to climb up, finding a branch to lie down on. When Zhengtan returned to the east courtyard, Charlie was waiting at the intersection leading to the courtyard. There were large sycamore trees at the intersection, and there was a large area of shade. He parked his electric scooter there and played with his phone, waiting for Zhengtan to come back. Obviously, Charlie knew about Zhengtan's movements from the Jiao family, so he waited there directly. This afternoon, Zhengtan was going to the pet center to shoot a video. Now the videos shot by Xiaoguo's studio, from the beginning of the advertising videos, promotional videos, and later some short stories by cats, were getting more and more popular. It was also because of these videos that a large number of fans of the pet center had gathered. Although many people were not in the city, or even in the province, and some were even abroad, they were quite familiar with the pet center. Every time the video was released, there would be a lot of people waiting on the internet, refreshing the web page, and buying pet supplies from the pet center through online shopping. This had formed a brand effect. Zhengtan also had quite a number of fans on the internet. Not only Zhengtan, many of the cats and dogs in the pet center had their own supporters. Although what was shown in the video might not necessarily be their true personality, the audience on the internet would not care about that. As long as they were happy watching the video, it would be fine. In the past, Zhengtan was the pillar of support there, but now, the pillar had changed, and Sesame took up the heavy responsibility. Although Xiaoguo and the others did not want too many people to know about Sesame, after such a long time, it was impossible for the people around to not know about it. Later, someone took a photo and posted it on the internet. It was a photo of Sesame poking its head out of the studio. After that, it became popular for a while, and many people left comments on the internet asking Xiaoguo not to hide it. After thinking deeply, Xiaoguo decided to let Sesame do it. Anyway, Sesame did not like to go out like peanut candy, and it was very bored at home. It had too much energy, and it was always busy. Moreover, this guy seemed to be interested in the shooting, and sometimes it would even join in the fun. After the test shooting, Sesame quickly adapted to this kind of life. Every time it saw that the camera was ready, it would happily run over to pose. Sesame was very smart. Although it was not like Zhengtan, who did not need anyone to teach it, compared to other cats, it was much easier to shoot. It only needed to be taught twice, and it even knew how to act cute. Many people watched the videos to see cats acting cute. It had a unique appearance, and it was very cute. It was different from Zhengtan's style in front of the camera, but it was very lethal. In the human world, this was a rising superstar. Although Zhengtan, the former best actor, still had his influence, it was very obvious that Sesame's supporters were increasing exponentially. Who knew when its popularity would surpass Zhengtan's one day? Zhengtan, on the other hand, didn't really care about this. After all, he wasn't a real cat, and didn't have any competitive relationship with Sesame. After the Jiao family asked him to reduce his workload, Zhengtan's only regret was that he didn't have enough overtime pay. Zhengtan did not go to the Jiao family often, and the Jiao family did not even want Zhengtan to go back. Anyway, there was already Sesame there, and there was no need to trouble Zhengtan. The Jiao family was worried because Zhengtan slept for 3 days in April. Compared to the last time when he slept for 7 days straight, and had to be hospitalized for a cold, his condition this time was relatively better. However, the Jiao family was even more worried. They could not find the cause of his illness, and it would be strange if they could not relax. At that time, Zhengtan only felt that it was a dream. He dreamed that he was sick, and was hospitalized in a ward. Beside him, there was a pretty nurse changing his medicine. Zhengtan had a little impression of that nurse. He had flirted with her before. Unfortunately, before he could flirt with her, she came back. Yo, Black Charcoal is back from the banquet. When he saw Zhengtan, Charlie put his phone back into his bag, opened the sunshade installed on his scooter, and waited for Zhengtan to jump on the back seat. Then he rode the scooter to the pet center. The props and cameras in the studio were already prepared. They had filmed some in the morning, and they were waiting for Zhengtan to come back. The big dog in charge of guarding the door was lying in the shadows of the corridor outside the studio. When it saw that Charlie was about to push the door open, it quickly squeezed into the room and enjoyed the air conditioning. Soon, it stopped panting with its tongue out and found a quiet place to take a nap. Dogs loved air conditioning too. Zheng Tan rested for a while before he started filming. The sooner he finished, the sooner he could go home. Charlie knocked on the door and entered Xiaoguo's office to hand in a form. When he saw what Xiaoguo was writing, he was a little surprised. "Boss, who did you arrange this curtain call performance for? Some of the dogs in our team are old, and they can't be tortured anymore. They don't look like humans, and they don't have wrinkles. However, if you pay attention, you will find that they are not young anymore." As he spoke, Xiaoguo picked up a small mirror next to him, looked at his face and sighed. "Life is like a tank of hot bath water. It is very comfortable to soak in it, but the longer you soak in it, the more wrinkles you will have." Charlie thought for a while. "This sounds familiar." He shook his head and continued. "But boss, you are still young. You are in the prime of your life, so there is no need to be emotional." Chapter 422. In fact, Xiaoguo had been thinking about the curtain call for a long time, but he had been too busy to do anything about it. Now that the weather was hot and he was staying at home to avoid the heat, he decided to make this plan. The cats in the studio were indeed old. Before the studio was established, they had been in the pet center for a few years. Some of them were even adopted strays. At that time, because of the epidemic, many cats were abandoned. Some of the more expensive cats were thrown out on the street, and the lucky ones were picked up by Xiaoguo. Among the cats that were about to participate in the curtain call, some were raised there since childhood, such as the American Shorthair Prince. There were also a few long-haired cats that were a few years older than Zheng Tan's cats. The oldest one was more than 10 years old, and was not as strong as it was in its prime. Some of them had been wandering around and had some chronic diseases. After coming to the pet center, although they had been well taken care of, they were still weaker than other cats of the same age. Every time they filmed, the same scene would probably be shot several times. Especially now that the audience's requirements for the quality of the film were getting higher and higher, the filming of the video had become stricter. Even if the protagonists in the video were cats, they had to try their best to avoid any mistakes and improve the quality. In this way, the tasks of the cats and dogs involved in the film would definitely be heavier. The Jiao family did not want Zheng Tan to come back to the studio for this reason. After all, walking on its own was different from participating in the filming. The latter was too heavy and troublesome in a short period of time. Even if Zheng Tan was less troublesome than the other cats, it still had to follow them for a long time. If necessary, it had to go out with them for a long time. Knowing that Xiaoguo was going to make a curtain call video, Zheng Tan quickly made a decision. He planned to retire with Prince and the other cats. After all, he rarely came to the pet center now. The Jiaoma had long hoped that Zheng Tan would stop working here. He was not short of money, so why did he have to find so many things to do? Besides, after retiring, it did not mean that Zheng Tan would stop coming to the pet center. When he was bored, he could still come and visit. After finalizing the 6 cats and 2 dogs that were going to retire, this time, Xiaoguo began to prepare for the shoot. Shooting the video of the 6 cats and 2 dogs leaving the entertainment industry was not something that could be completed in a day or two. According to Xiaoguo's high requirements, it was estimated that it would take a longer time in the form of a documentary. This was because Xiaoguo wanted to follow the seasons. He would film a little in the summer, a little in the late summer and early autumn, and a little in the autumn and winter festivals. He would not be able to film the spring season. Xiaoguo planned to find some clips from previous edited videos to add in. The video of their exit from the entertainment industry was only shot at the end of the year. At the same time, Xiaoguo also made some related souvenirs, such as pillows, calendars, and postcards. They were all from the 6 cats and 2 dogs. When buyers came to buy things from the pet center, he would give them some related souvenirs. Before the film came out, the 6 cats and 2 dogs, including Zheng Tan, had fewer tasks, but they would still participate in the shoot. Even if they showed their faces, they wanted to show their presence. Some netizens and customers of the pet center noticed the changes, but they did not say anything. It was the same principle as the older generation in the entertainment industry making way for the younger generation. Until Xiaoguo released the news that the 6 cats were retiring, at the same time, the internet suddenly exploded. Many people mentioned Black Sea, and many people asked about the other cats. Even the supporting roles were liked by many people. Curtain call? No way. Are BC and Prince all old? Are they over 10 years old? Generally, 7 or 8 years old cats are considered old. If it is a dog, it is estimated that it is younger. Looking at it, they are indeed not young. It is good that they are retiring. They can have a good rest. There is no need to go through so much trouble. 7 or 8 years old cats can be considered old. Nonsense. My cat is 12 years old, and it goes to the eaves every day to catch birds. My cat is 14 years old. I saw it catch mice the day before yesterday. However, everyone was just complaining, and they felt very sorry. Many of them were old customers of the pet center, and they still had a deep impression of the first batch of cats and dogs, including Black Sea, because at that time, the pet center was not as mature as it was now, and it brought a lot of fun and benefits to many pet owners. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. When they were on the rise, mobile phones were not so popular, the internet was not so popular, and the pet center was just an unknown small shop. The equipment of the studio was simple, and Xiaoguo was anxious about the thousands of yuan shooting fees. Looking at the current situation, it had changed a lot. In the video of the curtain call, there were some unreleased NGs from the early days of shooting. There were pictures and videos of the 6 cats and 2 dogs, including Zheng Tan. Although Zheng Tan did not make many mistakes in the early days of shooting, the other cats and dogs would make mistakes. There were several scenes of Zheng Tan's helpless expression when the other cats and dogs made mistakes one after another, which amused the audience. On the screen, the cats would act out the character direction of the story according to the arranged roles, and the real-life scenes would tell others what the most real cats were like. Some cats were arrogant and looked like the flowers on the distant snow mountain, noble and not to be teased, but in fact, as long as you picked a weed and waved it in front of them, they would be attracted and become funny in a second. And some cats looked honest and harmless, kind and amiable, but in fact, when you wanted to get close to them and interact with them, you would find that no matter how much effort you put in, it would be useless. Instead, they would stand on a high place and look at you like you were an idiot. Not every cat was like Candy Peanut, who had the ambition to be the top cat in the cat world, fighting outside all day long. After fighting the big cats, she would fight the small dogs, and after fighting the small dogs, she would fight the bigger dogs. Occasionally, she would bring back a few gifts such as birds, grasshoppers, fat mice, and so on. More urban pet cats lived in small places, and they were more indoors. The former prince would routinely jump on the long wooden board tied with a circle of hemp rope after eating every morning. He would scratch from the front to the back, and no matter who called him, he would ignore it. Anyway, he was full, and in his opinion, nothing major would happen in his cat life, so he was indifferent to the outside world. After scratching, he would find a comfortable place to take a nap. Now, after eating, he would find a soft place where he could bask in the sun and close his eyes to take a light nap. Of the 2 dogs, Zheng Tan had known the old dog for many years, the golden retriever Lord, who had won many awards in pet shows. Its head picture was still used as the outer packaging picture of some dog food produced by the store. In the past, it ran energetically on the grass and jumped high to catch the frisbee. Now it could only hold its own rice bowl, and couldn't jump even if it wanted to. The other male dog, who was older than Lord, used to pee along the way when he was taken out for a walk. Through the pheromones in the urine, he would tell other dogs his age, gender, and status and leave his name card. After seeing a good object suitable for marking, it would raise one of its hind legs and pee a few drops of dog urine at the target, proudly dig the ground a few times, growl a few times, and then find the next target suitable for marking, which could be a straight tree or a fire hydrant on the side of the road. Now, when it went out for a walk, it looked more lazy. It didn't look for targets to mark as frequently as when it was young, and it didn't have so much strength to raise its leg. However, if there were other younger male dogs around, it would still pee with one of its hind legs raised high to prove that it was not old. Every cat or dog had its own story and life path. Xiaoguo integrated his own summary into the film, and let everyone review the changes and contributions of the 8 dogs from the beginning to the present. Of course, Xiaoguo also used some artistic techniques to reasonably exaggerate and render it to achieve a better effect. The last scene of the film was a long road. Zheng Tan was walking on the road, stepping on the withered and fallen sycamore leaves, and gradually walking away. The last scene was taken by Xiaoguo at Tsinghua University. Zheng Tan was walking on the campus main road with tall sycamore trees on both sides that were closest to the eastern courtyard. During the filming, Zheng Tan had an illusion that he would really be old as he walked like this. His life, including his cat life, was only 30 years old. Everyone had different people or things that were called classics in their hearts, and they were irreplaceable in their hearts. When people with different ideas talked about this topic, they could even have a bloody debate. First theory, then fists to determine who was the real classic. Their farewell performance also meant the end of an era. Just like how fans chased after their idols, the time when their idols existed symbolized an era. And when their idols retired, it opened up a new era. More new people would enter the eyes of fans, and more exciting and well-produced publicity and videos would replace the crude and low-budget videos of the past. They would also gradually replace the old and yellowed figures in their memories. However, after leaving the screen, the human celebrities would still have people to commemorate them. They had a huge fan base, and after a few years, many fans would still reminisce about them. After a little bit of manipulation, they would interview the retired celebrities, and they would bring everyone back to the glory of the past. However, when it came to cats, such situations were very rare. People often said that a generation was born in 10 years, but for cats and dogs, 10 years might be their entire lives. No matter how well they said it now, and no matter how many people liked them on the forum and urged them to stay, they were not human after all, and their influence was limited. After another 1 or 2 years, perhaps there would be very few people who would remember them. However, compared to dogs, cats might not care. Just as some people once said, in fact, many cats could tell at a glance whether you liked them or not. The problem was that they did not care at all. They did what they wanted, and they did what they wanted. They stayed at home on a rainy day and basked in the sun on a sunny day. In high-walled courtyards, luxurious villas or street shops, warehouse workshops, or even some more ordinary families, they used their own ways, just like hundreds of years ago, to go back and forth between talents and beauties, to pass through the slums and the rich areas, and to pass by people they knew or didn't know. It was a relatively short time. People had fun, cats had fun, and life was more fun. Chapter 423. Now that Zheng Tan had left the pet center, he didn't need to worry about the pet center anymore. All the pictures of Black Sea on the internet were from the past. When Zheng Tan went online, he found that his pictures were appearing less and less. Instead, they were replaced by the new generation of cat celebrities at the pet center. There were all kinds of cats with sharp chins, round chins, long hair, short hair, skinny and fat balls, and cute and handsome cats. Soon, they attracted the attention of new and old customers and netizens. Gradually, people stopped talking about the older generation of cats that had left the pet center. Zheng Tan was a little unhappy at first, but soon he didn't care. He didn't plan to make a living out of this anyway. However, since there were no more missions, Zheng Tan started to feel bored. This was a psychological thing. Should he go out and visit people? But everyone seemed to be busy with their own things. Later, Zheng Tan didn't want to disturb them. Zheng Tan didn't want to stay at home all day long. He didn't want to stay idle at home because when he was free, he wanted to sleep. He didn't sleep as lightly as he usually did with Sheriff Depang and the others. He slept very deeply and couldn't be woken up. He slept for a few hours to half a day. Compared to the beginning, it wasn't a long time, but it happened too often. He often dreamed of some familiar scenes when he was a human. It was the same as what Zheng Tan remembered. When he woke up, Zheng Tan had to sit down and think about whether he was a human or a cat. One day last week, when Zheng Tan woke up, he didn't pay attention. He walked out of the room directly and came face to face with Jiao Ma, who was walking out of the kitchen. Zheng Tan's first reaction was not to immediately lie down on all fours, but to confusedly raise his paws to scratch his head. The bowl of soup in Jiao Ma's hands almost fell out. Fortunately, she had seen Zheng Tan's special behavior over the years. Otherwise, the bowl of hot soup in Jiao Ma's hands would have fallen to the ground. After that day, Zheng Tan didn't want to stay at home. Otherwise, he would sleep in a trance and not know what he was. Sure enough, When one was worried about something, he had to replace it with something else. It was better to go out and wander around the campus than to sleep in a daze and not know where he was. But to be honest, Zhang Tan was a little worried. He flipped through the calendar, and every day was the same. When he came back to his senses, he realized that time had passed really fast. In fact, he hadn't done anything, and there was nothing that left a deep impression. The calendar in the living room had inadvertently flipped to September 2012. Little Pomelo was in her third year of high school. She was getting busier with her studies, but she would still go home once a week to do test papers and read books at home. Jiao Yuan was still in the capital and could only come back once or twice a year. Her father had won another project. Other than sleeping at home every day, he basically spent the rest of his time working in the hospital, and business trips were not included. Her mother was taking care of graduates, preparing for lessons and marking papers. And the only one who had gained weight was Zhang Tan. Jumping off the scale at home, Zhang Tan stretched. He only gained half a kilo. It wasn't obvious on a human, but it was different on a cat. Zhang Tan had gained weight because of the continuous rainy days outside. He had been cooped up at home, eating, sleeping, and eating. Now that the weather had finally cleared up, Zhang Tan decided to go out for a walk. He could only sleep at home, and he would gain weight while dreaming. No matter how he looked at it, it was better to go out for a walk. After 2 weeks of continuous rainy days, except for the freshmen who were in military training, everyone else was looking forward to the sun coming out. Once the weather cleared up, there were many people who were drying their blankets and clothes outside. Like Zhang Tan, Huang, who had been cooped up at home for so long, also came out to stretch his body. Basking in the sun was good for him. Coming out of the eastern courtyard, Zhang Tan walked aimlessly. No one knew what he was thinking. When he heard the cries and laughter of children, he came back to his senses and realized that he was almost at the kindergarten. At the kindergarten, after Zhuo Xiaomao left, 2 people called Brother Black came, Wei Xiaopeng and Yuan. When they first entered the kindergarten, the 2 of them ran to the fence of the wall when they saw Zhang Tan, and cried to Zhang Tan outside. Zhang Tan had just seen them playing happily with the other children, but in the blink of an eye, their faces changed and they cried and shouted that they wanted to go home. When Zhang Tan left, the 2 of them went back to play. Therefore, after Zhang Tan knew of their strategy, he would take a detour every time he passed by the kindergarten. He definitely wouldn't let the 2 of them see him. Mao even told Zhang Tan their class schedule, so that Zhang Tan wouldn't be caught by the 2 children who were taking outdoor classes. When they first entered the kindergarten, the first thing Mao taught Yuan was not "thank you" or "I'm sorry," but how to protect himself and how to flip the other party to the ground. This matter was known by everyone after Yuan beat a little boy who took his paintbrush until he cried. Because of this, Mao was scolded by his mother when he brought his wife and children home. As for Wei Xiaopeng, at the beginning, no one in the class would take the initiative to look for trouble. This was because he was too strong and wasn't easy to deal with. Now it was much better. When they saw Zhang Tan, they would only shout a few times and wouldn't cry and beg to be brought home. Children at this age would change a lot with each year, and they would know more things. However, Zhang Tan was already used to taking a detour and rarely went to the kindergarten. If he took a detour from the kindergarten, there was a Y-shaped intersection. One path led deeper into the school, while the other led towards the school's main gate. Zhang Tan turned and walked towards the main gate. He wondered if he should go out of the school gate to play. Otherwise, it would be too boring and he would just have to wait for time to pass. If he was a cat, it would be fine. He wouldn't have that kind of trouble and he would be able to play with his tail and feet for a long time. However, the problem was that Zhang Tan was not a real cat. There was an empty space near the school gate. The school bus's starting point was there. There were electric buses that had 10 to 20 seats, and there were also large buses that had 50 seats. The former would only run inside the school, while the latter would run inside and outside the school to pick up new students and foreign guests. One of the large buses led to the affiliated high school. Now Jiao Ma and little Pomelo often took this bus. At this time, there were 3 small electric school buses at the parking lot, but the large buses were nowhere to be seen. The drivers of the small school buses would park there and drive off when 80% of the seats were filled. If there weren't enough seats, They would continue to wait. If they really couldn't wait, they would drive off. However, there wouldn't be a situation where they kept waiting. In the school bus on the side, the driver was sitting there, playing games on a tablet. Although these people in their 40s and 50s drove the school bus here every day, their family conditions were not as bad as the students thought. There were quite a few of them who had phones and tablets that cost a few thousand yuan. The driver was sweating profusely as he tapped on the screen. His bald head looked even brighter. Zheng Tan, who had planned to go straight out of the school, paused. He turned and walked in that direction. He jumped onto a small sycamore tree. It was impossible to squat on a branch. The tree was too small, and the branches couldn't bear Zheng Tan's weight. Therefore, Zheng Tan just hugged the trunk and looked in that direction. Zheng Tan had seen the game that the driver was playing before. It was a casual game developed by Feng Baijin, Cat and Mouse. The driver tapped on the screen to catch the white, gray, and black rats running around on the screen. Some were big and some were small. Some were fast and some were slow. Some were cute, and some looked ugly. Different rats had different attributes and gave different points. Some of the rats might not be able to react too quickly, and some of the rats with higher points would be missed. Not to mention the people who didn't play games much before the age of 40 or 50. Otherwise, the driver wouldn't be sweating profusely while tapping on the screen in the weather of 10 degrees Celsius. Ah, just a little bit more. The driver sighed. What's wrong? You didn't surpass your grandson? The driver on the school bus that was closer to the outside asked with a smile. Yeah, just a little more than 200 points. 20 black rats would have been enough. Sigh, I'm old, and I can't keep up with the young people. Even my grandson who just started primary school plays better than me. The bald driver sighed, and was about to raise his head 45 degrees in sadness when he saw a black cat on the tree next to him, staring at him. Hey black cat, come over here. The bald driver waved happily. Come, let's play together. Zheng Tan. The driver next door. Actually, the bald driver was just saying that. He didn't think that the black cat would really come over. Zheng Tan was bored. Since the other party wanted him to play games, why wouldn't he go? Jumping to the passenger seat, Zheng Tan looked at the bald driver and waited for him to take out the tablet. The bald driver's eyes widened, and then he laughed out loud. He took out his tablet and started the game. The driver next door saw this and sneered in his heart. You damn baldy. Aren't you afraid that the cat will scratch the thousands of yuan tablet your son bought for you? Obviously, the bald driver didn't think about this problem at all. He was thinking that after he surpassed his grandson, he would go back and tease that kid. That kid was still showing off in front of him yesterday. The bald driver had been playing this game for a week. Although Zheng Tan hadn't played it before, he had seen Feng Baijin play, so he got the hang of it quickly. One person and one cat. One person used his finger to quickly move, and the other cat used its paw to clap. When the time was up, the bald driver looked at the score and laughed loudly. He slapped his leg as he laughed. I finally surpassed it. There was Wi-Fi here, so the score was automatically uploaded online. Whoosh! The ranking of the friend's score had changed. This uncle's ranking directly jumped up by 3 places. Old Zhao, it seems that the cat is still the best at catching rats. Look, once the cat joined, the score went up. The bald driver said in a tone as if he had experienced it before. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and said to Zheng Tan, who was in the passenger seat, Come, let's continue. Let's surpass my son and let him know the consequences of a tiger showing its might. Driver Zhao next door. Shaking his head, Master Zhao didn't intend to pay attention to the old bald driver. He had already sat with nearly 10 students, so it should be about time to set off, right? However, when he looked back, he found that there were only 3 students left. He looked at the bald driver next door. Whoa! They all ran over. Some students took photos with their phones and uploaded them online. Some students asked what game it was, and after asking they went next. Regardless of whether they were male or female, they all stretched their necks to look. Since the police cat incident at the New Boy concert, there hadn't been any interesting news in the school. Now that there was one, the students were all excited. Post forward, and forward again. In today's era of online entertainment, many people saw the scene of Zheng Tan. and the bald driver playing the game together. In a laboratory at the Institute of Biological Sciences. The person who was browsing Weibo with his head down was caught by Professor Jiao. The child wasn't in a hurry. He smiled flatteringly and opened the Weibo post he had just seen. Then he faced Professor Jiao and raised his large screen phone. "Boss, look. Is this yours?" Chapter 424. Zheng Tan didn't expect to be so popular after leaving the pet center. Although he wasn't as popular as when he was the sheriff, he still heard students talking about him every time he went out. Zheng Tan didn't feel much about it, and the Jiao family didn't do anything about it either. After all, this incident didn't have a big impact, and it didn't cause any trouble. At most, they would take a few more photos. Whenever Zheng Tan went out, she would still wander to the school bus stop and play the game with the bald driver. Because of that, the bus that Zheng Tan was in was always full. If not for the fact that the contract with the school stated that there would be a fine for overloading the bus, the bald driver would have overloaded the bus every time. Sometimes Zheng Tan didn't go, but the students who often took the school bus already knew the bald driver. If they had a choice and weren't in a hurry, they would prefer to go to the bald driver's bus. Some of the more open-minded students even chatted with the driver, such as, "Did you break the game record? Let's add each other in the game to compare the score. Did the black cat come today?" And so on. Then they would take out their cell phones and check Weibo. "Look, I'm on this bus again today. Too bad I didn't see the black cat." The bald driver's good business made the rest of the team jealous, but what could they do? It was their fault that they didn't have a cat. When Zheng Tan was in a good mood, he would take the bald driver's bus and run around the campus. During breaks, the bald driver would share the bread in his bag with Zheng Tan. After eating, he would drink some water. The bald driver would continue to drive, and Zheng Tan would continue to sit in the bus and enjoy the scenery. When Zheng Tan was there, the students would purposely leave the co-driver's seat to him. If anyone tried to grab the seat, they would be glared at by others. Unless Zheng Tan took the initiative to get down from the co-driver's seat, very few people would take the initiative to grab the seat. However, Zheng Tan wouldn't join in the fun during the peak hours. It would only make him feel uncomfortable. The feeling of walking around the school on his own was different from sitting on the school bus. When Zheng Tan was too lazy to run by himself, sitting on the bus and enjoying the scenery was also good. Zheng Tan got out of the car at an intersection. This place was relatively remote. Usually no one would get on or off here. But today, an old lady and her grandson were waiting by the side and waving. There were no seats left on the car. Zheng Tan got off the car directly and gave the seat to the old lady and her grandson. Moreover, Zheng Tan also wanted to take a look at the old tile-roofed house. The cell phone was still hidden here. There were a few more buildings in the old tiled housing area that were marked as dangerous, but the school still didn't do anything to the buildings here. There were rumors that the school was planning to demolish the entire place and rebuild it. However, it would probably take 1 or 2 years, or even longer. In any case, Zheng Tan still hid his phone in the same place before this area was demolished. Lu Ba and Jin Gui received a big order, and went to do the task together. There was no news from them in the past 2 months. Before Lu Ba left, she replaced Zheng Tan's cell phone with a new one. Mobile devices were upgraded so quickly. When Lu Ba changed her own device, she also changed Zheng Tan's phone. She also helped to top up the phone bill and set up a package. Therefore, Zheng Tan didn't have to worry about anything. Zheng Tan climbed in through the window, pulled out the drawer, and took out his cell phone. He began to browse Weibo. He knew that he was quite popular on Weibo recently. Every time he turned on his cell phone, he would show off. Then he would comment on the angle of the new photos taken by the student, and select a few to forward. From the day of registration until now, Zheng Tan's account had posted a lot of Weibo. Browsing through Weibo, Zheng Tan saw a student advocating the doomsday theory. Well, rumors of doomsday had been circulating this year, especially at the end of the year. All kinds of rumors were flying everywhere. Some were debating, some joined in the fun, and some took the opportunity to promote the doomsday survival suit. Zheng Tan noticed a netizen with the ID, teasing you mohaha. Recently, his Weibo posts were basically about the doomsday, such as how to spend money when the doomsday is coming. It's over if you don't go crazy, and ways to die in the doomsday, and so on. After scrolling through a few posts, Zheng Tan's hands were itchy. He replied to the new Weibo post with teasing. The other party's reply was also very fast. At first, he argued with Zheng Tan about the possibility of the doomsday on December 21, 2012. Seeing that Zheng Tan still insisted that it was fake, the other party began to become impatient. The argument turned into a quarrel. The other party was indeed a believer in the doomsday theory, but Zheng Tan, who had experienced it himself, knew that after that day, life would still go on as usual. Because Zheng Tan had reposted some of his own Weibo posts, he had attracted a lot of fans. The ID teasing you Mahaha also had a lot of followers. When Zheng Tan quarreled with the other party, followers from both sides came over to watch. There were also people who wanted to see chaos on the side. What if nothing happened on the 21st? Teasing you Mahaha replied, "If this is fake, I'll do a live broadcast of me chopping my penis." More people started to make a fuss. If you have the ability to fool people, you are right. Obviously, before the 21st, this netizen teasing you Mahaha had indeed fooled a lot of people. Judging from his tone, there was no trace of hesitation. Of course, there were also some people who felt that this kind of guarantee was as unreliable as Treasure X's, "Pay with your life if it's fake." After that, teasing you Mahaha posted a separate Weibo post. "If the 22nd comes as usual and there is no apocalypse, I will curse myself to become a cat. If the apocalypse really comes, Zheng Tan, you will become a black cat like the one on your profile picture. Do you dare to bet?" As soon as this provocative Weibo post was posted, some people who were watching silently just now joined in the crowd. Zheng Tan was originally fiddling with his paws as he typed with difficulty. Who knew that before he could type a sentence, he saw this Weibo post? He suddenly wanted to smash his phone. Become a cat? Become a F**king cat. F**ck. Although there were a lot of such jokes on the internet, in the eyes of others, it was also a joke-like bet. If curses were useful these days, why would the police be needed? However, Zheng Tan was not happy. He felt like he had been stabbed countless times. For Zheng Tan, his apocalypse was the day he opened his eyes and found that he had become a cat. He really felt that the world was full of evil and infinite absurdity. Zheng Tan wanted to reply, "If the apocalypse doesn't come, let me become a human again." However, no one would believe this sentence. Others would say, "If you're not a human now, then what are you?" Even if they were far away and looked at the small screen on the phone, no one would believe the authenticity of Zheng Tan's sentence. Instead, more people would shout that Zheng Tan did not dare to bet. F**ck. Type, delete, type again. If he was not satisfied, delete again. In the end, Zheng Tan took a deep breath and directly turned off his phone. Forget it. Out of sight, out of mind. Nothing can change the reality. After putting his phone back into the drawer, Zheng Tan climbed out of the window and looked at the gray sky outside. He squatted by the flower bed and thought carefully, trying to recall if he had made a similar bet with anyone before. If he lost, he would become a cat or something. His memory was a little faint, but Zheng Tan still believed that he had not made such a bet with anyone. The question was, how did he become a cat? This was something that Zheng Tan could not figure out all these years. While Zheng Tan was squatting by the flower bed and thinking hard, an old man came out for a walk with a big dog. It was Old Man Li and Xiaohua. Xiaohua should be called Old Flower now. It used to be a little clumsy, but now that it had lost weight compared to its peak, it felt even more clumsy when it walked. The man and the dog did not walk fast. They walked slowly, like two old men next to each other. Large dogs tended to age more easily than small dogs. The average lifespan was not an advantage, so Old Man Li was very worried every time Xiaohua fell sick. He also gave it timely treatment. If the weather was good, he would take Xiaohua out for a walk. An appropriate amount of exercise was good for the two old men. Old Man Li was also very careful when feeding Xiaohua. After consulting with the pet center, according to Xiaohua's physique, Old Man Li did not dare to feed it one meal at a time. A while ago, Old Man Li took Xiaohua to the pet center for a checkup. The people there said that Xiaohua could live for more than 15 years without any problems. Whether the people at the pet center said comforting words for Old Man Li's sake, or it was a theoretical result based on Xiaohua's health checkup report, Old Man Li had been persisting in following Xiaoguo's suggestion for the past few years. He was consistent and persistent. Even though Xiaohua was not like Niu Zhuangzhuang who could catch mice and chase away thieves, this old man with a head full of white hair still treated this dog, which was more docile than the other dogs in the compound, like family. Seeing the two old men walk away, Zheng Tan jumped down from the flower bed. The wind blew. The yellow leaves that were still stuck to the branches were pulled down and fell to the cement ground. When the wind blew, it made a rustling sound. Stepping on the fallen leaves, Zheng Tan walked along the path to the compound. After a few steps, he turned a corner and found Sahara lying on the ground in front of him, whining like a dog. Ruaning stood a few steps in front of it, looking helpless. 2 more steps. Come, be good, just 2 more steps, Ruaning said to Sahara. Awoo awoo. Sahara still did not move. Lazy thing. Ruaning was so angry that she walked in circles. Like Old Man Li and the others, Ruaning would take time out every day to bring Sahara out for a walk. Sahara was not as cooperative as Xiaohua. Sahara seemed to be born with a rebellious nature. Even though it was already so old, it was still playing little tricks. Whatever you wanted it to do, it would refuse. When it was at home, it would always move around as if it had ADHD. When it came out, it would be lazy, lying down after taking a short walk. Ruaning did not pull on the leash like she did a few years ago. She was afraid that she would pull something out of it. Even though the pet center's health examination results were good, Ruaning still could not bear to do it. Seeing this, Zheng Tan sneered in his heart. This Sahara likes to pretend to be weak now. Yesterday, it chased a little Pekingese that tried to steal its bone all over the compound. Today, it's pretending to be weak again, as if it was certain that Ruaning could not do anything to it. Sure enough, in the end, Ruaning still carried Sahara. Carry it for a while, then walk on your own. Do you hear me? Ruaning reprimanded. Awoo. Being carried, Sahara was not obedient. It moved here and there. This position was not as comfortable as before, so it protested. Ruaning, who had raised Sahara for so many years, clearly knew everything about Sahara. Be obedient and don't move around. You just pooped. I'm not going to hold your butt. Awoo. Damn it. Did I raise an ancestor? Ruaning muttered. Having such a dog, and having raised it for so many years, no matter how bad its temper was, Ruaning would accept it. She changed the position and carried it. As expected, Sahara was much more obedient and did not bark anymore. Then it looked at Zheng Tan behind and wagged its tail proudly. Zheng Tan cursed in his heart. Moral. Beep beep. At the intersection in front, Jiao Pa was riding an electric scooter. He looked in Zheng Tan's direction and honked. Chapter 425. The end of the world was just as Zheng Tan had expected. Zheng Tan did not go online to talk about the bet with those people, nor did he have the mood to join in the fun and denounce those who had spread the doomsday theory. After the doomsday, the atmosphere in the Jiao family became more and more tense. One was little Pomelo's college entrance exam, the other was Zheng Tan's condition. Little Pomelo did not choose the guaranteed admission to Tsinghua University, because there were limited places. She gave the place to her old classmate, Xie Xian. Xie Xian's grades were not as stable as hers, and little Pomelo's grades had always been good. After talking with the Jiao Pa, little Pomelo made the decision. For a senior high school student, time passed faster than anyone else, as if there was not enough time. Fortunately, little Pomelo's psychological quality was good, which made the Jiao Pa and Jiao Ma feel relieved. Zheng Tan's problem was the same as last year. He was always dreaming. Even if he only closed his eyes for a short while, he would dream a lot. His thoughts were very chaotic, and Zheng Tan did not dare to sleep anymore. His mental state was definitely not good due to lack of sleep. The Jiao Ma also took Zheng Tan to the pet center for a checkup. There were no major problems, just lack of sleep. The Jiao Yuan had called home many times in the past 6 months. He asked about little Pomelo's condition, and also asked about Zheng Tan's condition. He also said that if the veterinarians here could not solve the problem, he could take them to Beijing for a checkup. There were many authoritative veterinarians there. Zheng Tan did not want to go, and the Jiao Ma had no choice. She thought that after little Pomelo's college entrance exam, The family would go to Beijing to visit the Jiaoyuan and take Zheng Tan for a checkup. When Zheng Tan was at home, he looked at the calendar on little Pomelo's desk and flipped through it. He tried to recall the time when he became a cat. It was around June, but he couldn't remember the exact time. It had been 10 years, so who would still remember? Moreover, Zheng Tan had been living a chaotic life back then. He didn't really remember the date. Sometimes he would even miss his school exams. Reaching out his paw, Zheng Tan drew an inconspicuous mark on the dates from the 1st to the 15th of June. He added a few more paws on the 7th and 8th, which were the dates of little Pomelo's college entrance exam. Every time Pomelo came back, Zheng Tan would pretend to be in good spirits. However, when little Pomelo left, Zheng Tan would return to his usual muddle-headed state. The Jiaopa asked Zheng Tan to stay in his office so that he could take care of him. Zheng Tan did not go. He felt more comfortable at home. On the morning of the 8th of June, the Jiaopa, Jiaoma, and little Pomelo went out. Zheng Tan went with them. The Jiaopa sent little Pomelo to the exam hall. The Jiaoma wanted to go to Fuzhong High School. Zheng Tan sent them out of the courtyard. He wanted to go for a walk, but he kept yawning and his eyelids were heavy. In the end, he decided to go home and sleep. Zheng Tan jumped onto the sofa in the living room. He was too lazy to get rid of the cat collar. He lifted his leg and kicked the remote control in the middle of the sofa far away. He then lay down on the sofa and listened to the subtle ticking of the clock. He closed his eyes. After the Jiaoma rode out of the house, she suddenly remembered that she did not bring the USB flash drive. She had copied some documents in the morning and forgot to take it out. She rode back. On the first floor, Depeng's grandmother was combing Depeng's fur. When she saw the Jiaoma, she said, "I just saw your black charcoal come back. He must have gone home to catch up on sleep." Hearing the grandmother's words, the Jiaoma did not pay much attention to it. She guessed that he had pretended to be too energetic when he sent little Pomelo out in the morning. Now he had gone home to rest. The Jiaoma thought that after today, she should find some time to take her cat to Beijing to have someone check on him. Otherwise, no one at home would feel at ease. When she went upstairs, the Jiaoma's eyelids kept twitching. She took out her keys and opened the door. She glanced around the house. The house was eerily quiet. There was only a cat tag on the sofa. There was no other movement. There was no black cat. It was as if there was no other creature in the house. Whoosh! The curtains of the half-open window were blown up. The warm June wind blew in through the window. Outside the window, the sun was shining brightly. Nanchung. In an elevator near Nanching University, in a high-rise apartment. In the bedroom, sunlight shone through the window and through the gap between the curtains that were not completely closed. The dazzling light made the person on the bed frown. His eyelids moved. Zheng Tan opened his eyes a little. The sunlight was shining on his face. When he woke up and saw the sunlight, he immediately closed his eyes. Reflexively, he raised his hand to block the sunlight and covered his eyes. Slap. The sound of a palm hitting his face was very clear in the quiet room. The slight pain was clearly transmitted to his brain. 3 seconds later, Zheng Tan opened his eyes. He looked through the gaps between his fingers. The decorations were unfamiliar yet somewhat familiar. The curtains at the floor-to-ceiling window were half-closed. The light was shining in from there. Blinking, Zheng Tan's mind was still a little muddled. He raised the palm covering his face and focused his eyes on the palm. The palm lines were clear. 5 long fingers. They were not black furry cat paws. F***ck. I'm dreaming again. After cursing in a low voice, Zheng Tan closed his eyes and planned to continue sleeping. After a few seconds of silence, Zheng Tan suddenly sat up and looked at the 2 palms in front of his eyes. Zheng Tan rubbed his face hard and tried to make a sound again. Cough. I-oh. The pronunciation was very clear. When he was dreaming, he didn't really talk, right? It seemed that he hadn't had the feeling of talking for a long time. It still wasn't right. Did he dream of a human when he was a cat? Or did he dream of a cat when he was a human? Zheng Tan lifted the thin blanket on his body and got out of bed. Without shoes, he stepped directly on the wooden floor covered with a layer of dust. He walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window and kicked aside the clothes and pants that were in the way on the ground. The feeling of walking on 2 legs was slightly strange, but it felt natural. He pulled open the curtains and opened the floor-to-ceiling window. A gust of wind blew in his face, bringing with it the warmth of the sun. Zheng Tan walked to the balcony, looked at the buildings in the distance, and took a deep breath. It seemed that he hadn't felt this kind of pleasure in a long, long time. Although his mind wasn't very clear now, Zheng Tan felt that if he roared like this, his mood would be much better. After roaring, Zheng Tan habitually looked down diagonally. On the balcony diagonally below, there was no barbed wire, no blue-purple parrot with yellow eyes jumping there. There was a 6 or 7-year-old child standing there, holding an ice cream in his hand. Probably because Zheng Tan suddenly roared like this, he was a little scared. He looked up at Zheng Tan in a daze, and didn't even notice that the ice cream had melted and dripped to the ground. Retracting his gaze and looking into the distance, Zheng Tan roared again. This roar was longer than the previous one. It was hysterical. In the house downstairs, the child who was standing there was carried into the house by the parent. The parent looked at Zheng Tan like she was looking at a lunatic. Not caring about other people's gazes or the curses of other residents, Zheng Tan roared a few times, went into the house and took a cold shower. When he came out, his mind was much clearer. He took the phone on the bedside table and looked at the date, June 12, 2013. Zheng Tan scratched his head. The 12th? There was a series of missed calls on the phone. The caller's name was a little familiar, but Zheng Tan didn't care. He looked at the time of the calls. The earliest call was from the 8th. Ignoring the missed calls, Zheng Tan was still confused. Was the cat real or the person real? If it was a dream, then it was too real. Didn't people say that after a dream, they would forget it when they woke up? He opened the Weibo app on the phone and logged in automatically, but it was not the Zheng Tan account in his memory. He logged out, logged in again, and entered the new account password. After a while he was logged in. That arrogant black cat avatar was the same as in his memory. Those Weibo posts, including the school bus game incident, the argument about the end of the world, all matched up. If the dream was real, Zheng Tan searched a few more keywords, such as a movie about a black cat, a documentary, a pet center, and a professor named Jiao. They were all exactly the same as in his memory. On the small phone screen, there were many familiar pictures, and each of them overlapped with his memory. Zheng Tan had a headache just looking at them. What the F***ck is going on? Throwing the phone aside, Zheng Tan thought hard, trying to figure out the reason. In the end, his stomach couldn't take it anymore, so he went downstairs and found the nearest restaurant to eat. The meal was tasteless, and his attention was not on the food at all. He mechanically picked up the spoon and put the rice into his mouth, but his eyes were looking out the window, thinking about other things. In the end, before he finished the food on his plate, Zheng Tan made a decision. He couldn't book a plane ticket now, and he couldn't book a train ticket. He booked an express ticket, leaving at 6 o'clock in the evening. He would arrive in Chuhua City at 6 o'clock in the morning. Since he couldn't figure it out, he would go and find the answer. When he left the restaurant and walked back, he passed by a small barber shop. Zheng Tan pulled the yellow hair on his head and walked in. When he came out again, his yellow hair had become black, and he cut it a little shorter. He went back and changed into a simple set of sportswear. He took his phone, bank card, and ID card. Looking at the avatar and name on the ID card, Zheng Tan tapped on the person on the card. He put the card in his wallet, took some change, and went to the bus station. At 6 o'clock the next morning, Zheng Tan walked out of the bus station. He didn't call for a taxi. Instead, he walked to the bus stop. He looked at the bus stop outside the bus stop and looked at the bus route. There were many familiar bus stop names. After waiting for the bus, he found a seat by the window and sat down. As the bus moved, he looked at the streets and buildings outside. The Dragon Boat Festival had just passed, and many stores still had billboards about the festival. At this time, there were many people going to work. At the crossroads where traffic was easy to get stuck, private cars and buses were lined up in long lines. The temperature outside was a little high, and the sound of car horns and people shouting filled the streets. It was easy to be irritated in this kind of weather, but Zheng Tan's mind wasn't on this. He wasn't irritated, just a little complicated. On the bus, a middle-aged passenger's phone rang. The song had a feeling of the 80s and 90s. Zheng Tan had heard this song before. It was not from the internet or any other electronic device. She had heard it sung by a bird. Zheng Tan felt as if she was looking at that cheap bird with yellow eye circles, swaying its head and singing. Some songs that were once looked down upon were like treasures when one recalled them many years later. The time of the song, the people, the things, and the emotions it triggered could always make one reminisce for a long time. On another bus that was parked at the crossroads, there was a young man sitting by the window with a bag on his back. He was munching on a bag of steamed buns in his hand. Noticing that Zheng Tan was looking at him, he looked over as well. Separated by 2 layers of windows and the reflection, the other person's expression couldn't be seen clearly. The right turn sign lit up, and Zheng Tan's bus went first. As the bus moved for a moment, Zheng Tan saw the other person's expression and the confusion in his eyes, but soon, the 2 buses went further and further away. When the street became familiar, Zheng Tan's mood became more complicated. He was a little nervous, but also a little happy. On the side of the street, there was a young policeman who had just caught a thief. He was handcuffed and talking into the walkie-talkie. On the big screen in the commercial square, there was a movie trailer. It was directed by Kong Han, and the actors were Wei Wen, Xue Ding, Tao Qi. 2 stops away from the original destination, Zheng Tan got off the bus. Following the familiar road in his memory, when he passed the lakeside villa area, a 3-legged tortoiseshell cat ran from the opposite side of the street with a mouse in its mouth. It glanced at Zheng Tan, then nimbly jumped over the fence into the villa area. On the side of the road along the lake, a dark gray cat with black patterns that was obviously larger than the other cats was sharpening its claws on a willow tree. Without making a sound, Zheng Tan continued to walk forward. When he passed by the affiliated hospital and a small grocery store, Zheng Tan looked over. The store manager with a mean face sat behind the counter with a cigarette in his mouth and ordered the employees to move the goods. A white cat sat on the shelf and looked at the passers-by with sharp eyes. Entering from the side door at the edge of the Tsinghua University campus, Zheng Tan walked along the wall. Next to a tall tree, on the inconspicuous wall, lines of crooked pencil-written words entered his eyes. Black charcoal. Zheng was here, December 12, 2009, September 9, 2010, February 28, 2011. There was an abstract sun at the end. Zheng Tan raised his finger and touched the words. There was some black pencil on his finger. Twiddling her fingers, Zheng Tan walked along the small path beside her. She walked past the small forest, past the old tile-roofed house, the familiar houses, the familiar lawn, the small path that she could recognize even with her eyes closed. And the courtyard. The east courtyard's guard uncle had sharp eyes. He immediately saw Zheng Tan's face among the people entering and exiting the courtyard. "Hey you, who are you looking for?" The guard uncle leaned out of the window and pointed at Zheng Tan. "I'm looking for Professor Jiao, who lives on the 5th floor of Building B," Zheng Tan said as he walked over. "Oh, Professor Jiao's house? He's not here. He should be at the Institute of Biological Sciences, but his cat went missing a few days ago. The whole family is looking for it like crazy. Young man, do you have any clues about his cat? It's a pure black cat. It's so big. It's called black charcoal. Have you seen it before?" The guard uncle asked anxiously. "I've seen it before." After a pause, Zheng Tan added, "It's a very handsome cat." Hearing Zheng Tan's answer, the light of hope in the guard uncle's eyes dimmed again. He didn't say anything else and waved his hand, indicating that Zheng Tan could go in. Taking a deep breath, Zheng Tan stepped in. A middle-aged woman carrying a basket of vegetables in and out glanced at Zheng Tan. She was probably guessing Zheng Tan's background in her heart. Near the courtyard's entrance, on a bench under the shade of a tree, Old Man Li and Old Man Yen were chatting with Little Flower and Niu Zhuangzhuang. The 2 old men only glanced at Zheng Tan and didn't look at him again. Instead, Little Flower and Niu Zhuangzhuang's eyes followed Zheng Tan's movements. Niu Zhuangzhuang's small triangular eyes didn't have its usual fierceness. Ruaning led Sahara out, and when he passed by Zheng Tan, Sahara bit at Zheng Tan's feet at lightning speed. That speed was completely different from the way he usually pretended to be weak. It didn't use much strength, so it wouldn't bite his foot. However, the bite wasn't light either. It left a few deep teeth marks and saliva on Zheng Tan's sneakers. Ruaning didn't expect Sahara, who usually didn't bite, to suddenly do that. She quickly apologized to Zheng Tan and offered compensation. Zheng Tan smiled and refused. When Ruaning scolded Sahara and left, Sahara turned back to look at Zheng Tan. Its eyes were slightly provocative, and its tail was wagging proudly. Zheng Tan glared at it. Sahara, just you wait. I promise I won't beat you to death. When he arrived at Block B, Zheng Tan's heart was beating faster. He was thinking about whether to press the door number on the door or call for someone. At this time, the old lady on the first floor brought the fat dragon-Li cat to the balcony. When she saw Zheng Tan, the old lady asked Zheng Tan curiously who he was looking for. She also asked Zheng Tan if he had seen a black cat. After Zheng Tan answered, the old lady's face was full of regret. His family isn't home. You can go to the Institute of Biological Sciences to look for Teacher Jiao. Pomelo should be there too. It's a pity about black charcoal. The Jiao family is crying because of him. That kid Jiao Yuan even came back last night. Xiaogu's eyes were still red when he went to work today. Sai, what kind of situation is this? The old lady lamented, but Depeng stared at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan reached out his hand. Depeng looked at the old lady and walked over. The old lady was surprised. Young man, you've been here before? My Depeng doesn't get close to strangers. There was something the old lady didn't say. Not only did he not get close to strangers, even if he knew Depeng, he wouldn't give face. However, the old lady didn't expect Depeng to be so familiar with him. Zheng Tan nodded. He didn't know how to answer. He scratched Depeng's chin and stood up to say to the old lady, "Then I'll go look for Teacher Jiao. You go do what you need to do." Even though the old lady was confused, she didn't ask. However, after Zheng Tan left, Depeng followed him. In the large yard, under the trees that weren't too dense or tall, a black and white cat was playing with bugs in the grass. A yellow cat was hugging a tree and sharpening its claws. Zheng Tan walked over and picked up Huang, who was sharpening its claws. "You idiot." He finally said this after holding it in for 10 years. The sheriff, who heard the commotion, stopped playing with the bugs and walked over. Zheng Tan sat down on a long wooden bench nearby. Depeng, who had followed him, jumped onto the bench and squatted beside him. Seeing this, Huang and the sheriff jumped onto the bench and squatted there. Just like before. In the summer morning, the temperature rose with the rise of the sun. There was wind, blowing in waves, making the leaves rustle. People who went to work, school, and grocery shopping in the yard all looked at the bench when they passed by. In the past, they always saw the 4 cats squatting there side by side. Now that the black cat from the Jiao family was gone, they saw 1 person and 3 cats sitting there. It was strange. Since when did the 3 cats become so familiar with the same person? After sitting on the bench for a while and calming down, Zheng Tan patted the 3 cats. "I'll go first. I'll come back to play with you guys later." He got up and left the yard. When he reached the intersection, a school bus passed by. Zheng Tan quickly waved his hand. The driver was bald. For the sake of his image, he wore a hat. It was already class time, so there weren't many people on the bus. The bald driver talked to Zheng Tan, who was sitting in the passenger seat. "Young man, are you from our school?" the bald driver asked. "No, but I used to come here a lot, so I'm very familiar with it. I've even sat in your car a few times," Zheng Tan answered. The bald driver looked at Zheng Tan, shook his head and said with certainty, "That's impossible. If you came here a lot and sat in my car, I would definitely remember." "Oh, then maybe I remembered wrongly. I sat in another driver's car." Zheng Tan didn't dwell on this question. The bald driver looked at Zheng Tan with pity. "You're young, but your memory isn't as good as mine. When you go back, ask your mom to get you more fish heads, walnuts, or something to help your brain." Zheng Tan. Don't take it lightly. Let me tell you. Sir, I'm getting off." After being reminded by the bald driver, Zheng Tan finally arrived. He couldn't wait to get off the bus. He looked at the familiar gate of the school and walked in. The guard sitting on the side of the gate saw Zheng Tan walk in so confidently. He thought about it and didn't stop this unfamiliar face. Zheng Tan was very familiar with where the Jiaopa's office was. When he came to the door of the office, the Xian happened to come out. Little Pomelo and the Jiaopa's voices were not loud. As Exian closed the door, the sound was also cut off. Exian looked at the person in front of her strangely. She thought it was an undergraduate student in the school, so she casually asked who he was looking for and left. Zheng Tan stood at the door and knocked. "Come in." A voice came from inside. Zheng Tan twisted the door lock and opened the door. Chapter 426. It had been a year, and it was finally over. As for the ending, Chen Xiai had thought of it when he was writing the first chapter. Therefore, the readers did not need to threaten Chen Xiai. He could not change it, nor did he know how to write the perfect ending. Since a few days ago, many readers had asked about the ending through QQ, Weibo, and private messages. However, Chen Xiai still decided to end it today. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Now many readers must be thinking, "Chen Xiai, come over. I promise I won't beat you to death." Once a reader said, "Chen Xiai, you abuse the readers. Out of 365 days in a year, you don't update for 300 days. Another reader said, "Chen Xiai, do you know how many readers have turned into nocturnal animals and lunatics because of this book?" Previously, after telling a friend about the ending, that friend said, "Chen Xiai, not only do you abuse the readers, you also abuse the protagonist. I know you don't talk much, but which book's protagonist only speaks in the last chapter? Ors, I'm really sorry to everyone. After today, there would probably be people who would say, what happened to the explosion at the end? What happened to Xiemingding? Chen Xiai would like to apologize to my beloved dog is called Wang Kai, Nyo Dian Cat, Yugi Kasimfu, Robot Baby, and this is not Xiaoji. I can't do it." Dragging on, this was the ending. Speaking of his writing experience in the past year, it had not been very smooth. He had encountered many things. Sometimes, when he sat in front of the computer, he had to listen to nursery rhymes to prevent the negative emotions from during the day from being brought into the novel. After all, this was a light-hearted novel. His hand speed was not fast to begin with, and there was a buffer time, so it was even slower. Watching TV and movies, he felt that heroes and people who did good deeds without leaving their names did not exist in reality. After all, society was driven by benefits. Chen Xiai had encountered many things, both in life and work. Sometimes, when everyone was in a deadlock, they would fight to the death for small benefits. Therefore, Chen Xiai used black charcoal to write some things and adjust his mood. However, he did not expect so many people to support him. Thank you to the 9,000 readers who have subscribed to my book, and thank you to the readers who voted and tipped me. Hui Mao was a niche novel, and was destined not to be long. It also did not have many clicks, but it had over 700,000 recommendation votes. This was something Chen Xiai had not expected. Without you, Hui Mao wouldn't have achieved today's results. Thank you, feline friends. I also have to thank editor Lai Shou for giving Hui Mao so many recommendations. As for the new book, I haven't written it yet. I'll talk about it after resting for a while, at least for a month. When the time came, it would be notified in the books of Hui Mao and Star Hunter. It would also be explained on Xinlong's Weibo. Readers who liked the style of speeches could pay attention to it when the time came. Physical publishing, movies, animation, and so on would also be notified on Weibo. Everyone, let's meet at the next intersection. It was late at night. Time to sleep.